Okay, good afternoon. It is Monday, July 26th. We are at the school board workshop. It is 2:01, and today's order of business is 1, health and safety 2021-2022 protocols, prioritizing workshop topics, and agenda review of the July 27th, 2021 regular agenda. And if we may go ahead and get started. Ms. Patrica, are you online? Ms. Patrica? Okay, not seeing her. We're still going to go ahead and start. And Ms. Stillwell, if you will go ahead and then begin. And everyone, please introduce yourselves, just for those who may not know who you are. Thank you.
All righty, good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Savage and Attorney Dupuy-Bruno. I'm Lauren Stillwell. I am the Chief of Staff for the school district.
Good afternoon, I'm Beth Whiff. I'm Health Services Coordinator for the Lee County School District.
Good afternoon, Dave Newland, Executive Director of Safety and Security.
Thank you.
And we're here to present, I feel like I should the health and safety protocols for the 21-22 school year. This year is definitely going to look more normal, quote unquote, than last year for sure. But we have worked with our healthcare providers and staff in order to put some protocols in place to work towards ensuring the health and safety of students and employees as we continue through the pandemic. Please note that the protocols that we present to you today may change throughout the year. We will let you know if that happens, but that would happen based on health conditions, updated guidance from medical professionals, and any governmental mandates. So really, as we kept asking people last year, the favorite word I think of the year was pivot. This year we're just going to say flexible, that we just need to stay flexible as we move through in order to make sure that our students and employees remain safe and healthy through the year. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Beth, and she's going to talk a little bit about last year's data, the current data, and how we're going to handle positive cases, exposures, and symptomatic kiddos and employees.
Thank you, Ms. Stillwell. Before we dive in, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of the data that we have from last school year, and this is up until July 16th of this year. You can see on the screen there the number of positive cases and the number of exposures are on the screen. It's important to note that these numbers are in total. We have no way of knowing whether the transmission was from family members, from the community, or from our schools directly. We do know from our partners at the Department of Health here in Lee County that secondary transmission was very low in our schools, and our goal is to keep it that way for this year as well. The current data that we have on the screen is from July 9th, 2021 to July 15th, 2021. You can see this is a report from the state of our current numbers, and our vaccination rate for those 12 and over sits at approximately 57%. The data for this week, for last week, which was July 16th through July 22nd, I just received those numbers this morning, we're up to 58% of vaccinated for those 12 and older, so we are heading in the right direction. You'll also see on the screen there that there was a little over 1,000 new positive cases for the week of July 9th through July 15th. Our current number for week of July 16th through the 22nd, we're at 1,650. So we are not heading in the right direction there. But our positivity rate for the week of July 9th through July 15th, we were at 10.8% for the county. The week of July 16th through the 22nd, we are at 14.7%. So we do notice a trend of that increasing. We do know that the Delta variant is bringing COVID numbers up. Our overarching message, no matter what the numbers are, is that we are working very hard to keep our students and our staff safe. We want to remind our students and employees, as well as all of our staff, that if you are sick, to please stay home. This will help keep down our positivity numbers and our exposure numbers in our school. The number one way to prevent the spread, and not just of COVID, but of any other illnesses, is if you stay home when you have any symptoms. And that brings me to the next slide of our symptoms for COVID. You'll see on the screen that we have divided symptoms into high-risk symptoms as well as low-risk symptoms. So we are going to be differentiating those for this school year. A study from the Washington University Pediatric and Adolescent Ambulatory Research Consortium, very long word, lists these different categories. And so when consulting with our healthcare providers in the community, they also agreed that this is a good measure of high-risk symptoms versus low-risk symptoms for COVID. You will remember this past year, no matter whether they had a high-risk or low-risk symptom, we did require both students and employees to remain out of school at least 10 days, plus they had to be 24 hours symptom-free. The only way that they could return was to isolate for those 10 days if they did not have a doctor's note to return. For this year, we will be differentiating and going according to our high-risk symptoms and low-risk symptoms. If a student or employee has any of the low-risk symptoms that are listed there, we are asking them to stay home, and they must be symptom-free for at least 24 hours without medication before they return. They will not need a doctor's note for these symptoms to return. This was one of the asks that we had from our healthcare providers in the community, and it benefits our students since they will have less lost instructional time. We may have to shift some of our low-risk symptoms back to high-risk symptoms if we are advised to do so by the CDC and the Florida Department of Health, Lee County. Moving from symptomatic cases to exposures, this process remains the same as last year, unless the person is vaccinated. If an employee or a student is fully vaccinated, meaning that it has been at least 2 weeks since their second dose of a vaccine, they will not have to quarantine. If they are not vaccinated, they will have to quarantine for the 10 days, returning on day 11. It is possible to reduce the quarantine time to 7 days, returning on the 8th day, if they have a negative PCR test on day 6 or later after exposure. The Florida Department of Health determines the dates of return for exposure cases, and at this point, the classroom teacher determines how lessons are accessed while under quarantine, unless something different is bargained. If someone is diagnosed with COVID-19, the process remains the same from last year. They will need to isolate and remain out of school for 10 days, assuming that no symptoms develop. If symptoms develop, the time will most likely be longer. The length of time is also determined by the Florida Department of Health contact tracers.
Thank you. So the symptom-based isolation protocols that Beth talked about are pretty much a major change from last year, where there's no doctor's note that is required to return for the low-risk symptoms. As you remember, we received communication from the FLDOE last April asking us about masks, and so that also is probably the biggest change for families going into this school year. And I have the memo on the screen there from the Department of Health, or excuse me, from the Department of Education, and then this one is the State Surgeon General's memo that we all received, which rescinded prior public health advisories about masking. So with that, the district went to voluntary masking in late June. Voluntary masking will remain in place for the 2021-22 school year, but we are encouraging masking, particularly for those who are not vaccinated, and that is per CDC guidance. But again, really, it's up to the families and our employees to determine what's best for them. For those who do decide to wear a face covering, it must follow the guidelines for apparel in the Code of Conduct, which was the same as last year. And if a student is sent to the isolation room, he or she may be asked to wear a mask while waiting for their parent to pick them up. So those are really the difference for face coverings for the 2021-22 school year. And Mr. Newland is going to talk a little bit more about other general requirements for health and safety protocols.
So for other protocols that will be in place, social distancing to the greatest extent possible. Cohorting will continue, but there will be more flexibility to put classes together this year with accurate seating charts will be kept in all classrooms, on the bus, and at lunch. An isolation room will be maintained at schools for those who have COVID-like symptoms. Hand sanitizer will remain a staple in schools, and students are allowed to bring their own. We will continue to remind students about the importance of hand washing and respiratory etiquette, and we encourage students to bring their own water bottles to limit the use of drinking fountains. In addition, there will be a high-frequency cleaning of common surfaces will continue. Positive case-triggered cleaning protocols will be followed when an individual has been diagnosed positive and has been in our vehicles or buildings within 24 hours. Cleaning products that kill the COVID-19 virus and are approved by the EPA will be used. Areas where food is prepared, stored, and served will be regularly cleaned with food-safe agents, and quarterly air filtration replacements will continue. Playgrounds will be disinfected at the end of each day, and students will wash hands of use hand sanitizer before and after play. School buses will be cleaned and disinfected after running both the morning and the afternoon, and athletic facilities, locker rooms, and gyms will open, and school staff will work to develop appropriate cleaning schedules for those areas. And finally, for visitors, unlike last year, we allowed only essential visitors into the schools. This year, we will relax that protocol. If a school is welcoming visitors or volunteers, a health screening form must be completed, and accurate information must be kept regarding where the visitor or volunteer is working and the students they are working with. CDC guidelines suggest that we do limit non-essential visitors, volunteers, and activities involving external groups or organizations with people who are not fully vaccinated. So we are asking visitors who are not vaccinated to wear masks and social distance while on campus. In addition, visitors and volunteers who have symptoms of infectious illness are asked to please not come to school and refer to their health care provider for testing and care. This protocol will be reviewed on an ongoing basis and may change.
All right, so just like last year, we're continuing to work with our partners at Lee Health, Golisano Children's Hospital, and the Florida Department of Health to provide COVID-19 testing and vaccine to students and employees. These are all optional opportunities that employees and families can take advantage of. In every case, a parent or guardian must be present for a student to receive a test and/or the vaccine. And when we have those kinds of opportunities, the district will be communicating those out to the families and the employees in the district, and information also will be obtained by calling our COVID-19 Information Center. So that is something that worked out really well for us last year. For those of you who visited the command center, Beth and her team were in there every day from 8 a.m. until 4:30 and sometimes longer, answering phone calls from employees, phone calls from families, things about our protocols and all of that stuff. And that was very good for us. We felt in a good outreach, so we are going to provide that again this year. The hours are on your screen, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., although we will be probably extending those hours for the first week or so of school because we expect that we'll probably get a lot of phone calls from families at that point, just trying to remember and understand what those protocols are. And then finally, for communication, last but definitely not least, just like last year, communication is going to be sent to families if there is a positive case at the school. If employees or students are impacted by that positive case, they will be notified by the Florida Department of Health, and they will be provided guidance as of what to do. In addition, the criteria for closing a classroom, school, zone, or district will remain the same. As you'll remember, we did have to quarantine classrooms last year, and that was normally in a situation where we had 5% of teachers, students, or staff in that classroom positive with COVID within a 10-day period. We do take a look at secondary transmission in that case, and also whether the case was in the contagious period during the time that they were in the classroom. So that protocol will remain the same. Knock on wood, we will be closing less classrooms this year, and last year we did not have to close any schools or any zones or the district, and so we are looking forward to a school year where we will not be doing that. So all of those stay the same and will be enumerated in the protocols. So the next steps for us, based on the questions and the discussion that you all want to have this afternoon, is that we are creating a page on the district's website. We are creating graphic banners for all of the schools. And within the week, what we will do is that we will send all of that information to the schools so that they can delete any 2020-21 protocols from the website, link directly to this site, which we will manage here at the district, and then that way, if anything changes as we move forward, it'll immediately update it, and the schools won't be responsible for having to update every little change that happens. So that would be the next step, and they would be posted by the end of the week.
Great, thank you.
And with that, we'll open it up for any questions.
Okay, Ms. Vaughn, please.
Thank you for the report. I have several questions. Will cafeteria workers wear masks?
At this point, all masking is voluntary.
I'm sorry?
At this point, all masking is voluntary.
Including those people who are preparing food? Okay, I'm going to say that's something I object to. All right, secondly, if a student, okay, slide said if a student is sent to the isolation room, he or she may be asked to wear a mask. If that person has exhibited enough symptoms to be sent to the isolation room out of an abundance of caution, would we not say you will wear a mask until your parents come and pick you up? Why does it say may there?
Some of the symptoms are not respiratory symptoms, such as a headache, diarrhea, those type of symptoms. So we may not ask them to wear a mask if they're exhibiting those symptoms. Most likely any respiratory symptoms such as cough, runny nose, sneezing, those type of things, if they're exhibiting those, we would ask them to protect our staff and other students in the clinic at that time.
Okay, and I'm going to say, I'm very honest. I'm going to say to me that makes no sense, because if they have COVID and it may exhibit itself in headache and have COVID, even if they're not coughing, that breath that's coming out of them in an isolation room, which would be a smaller room, would be detrimental to the nurse or clinic assistant who's in there. Two more. You keep referencing if people are fully vaccinated. Since we are not allowed to ask for proof in the state of Florida, how do we know? Personally, if I go to Target or somewhere like that and it says if you are fully vaccinated, it's optional to wear a mask, that's not a big deal to me. I decide wear a mask or not. But these are our schools, and there are going to be people that say, no problem, I'm safe. So we're just going on the honor system, is that correct?
At this point, my understanding is we don't have any standing to be able to ask people to show their
Right, right.
vaccination cards. So yes, we would have to go on the honor system.
Okay, and that's another rack it up for another problem, which probably goes to Tallahassee and our government there more than it does to our district. And finally, one of the first slides had the situation, the weekly situation report on the number of people aged 12 and over vaccinated. I keep up with very specific data on this, and I can tell you that, first of all, as everybody knows, we have a very high percentage of 65 and over population, including me, in Lee County. I'm going to bet that when you look at the 65 plus, as I have for not just Lee County, but Florida and other states, it's a really high percentage. If you look at the children between 12 and 18, I'll bet there's a small percentage. And if you look at, in general, the people who are likely to be in our schools as any kind of staff, it's a much lower percent than that 57. So I find that a little bit misleading, and I feel like when you see 57% advertised out there, it gives people a sense of well-being. Oh, 57%, and I know there have been many more people who, in the weeks since the 9th, is it the 9th that it was? Something like that. Have been vaccinated, because I'm watching all the time on TV, for instance, the mom who is being interviewed in tears, standing next to her 13-year-old daughter who is intubated, saying, I wish I'd paid more attention. So I know I'm asking questions. I'm also giving my public service announcement, which I know is not popular with some people, but I'm here for the good of our staff and our children and everyone in the community. And so I'm hoping, as we're seeing this spike every week going up from the Delta variant, and we're seeing people who are vaccinated with breakthrough infections that may be asymptomatic, that we are a little more proactive. I'm not going to go as far as saying mandatory masking, but that we're a little more proactive. And something that I had emailed several weeks ago is I feel like we need to do a better job at educating our community on the facts and being very proactive in educating on the dangers. So that's the end of my speech and the end of my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. And if we could try to keep to like a 3-minute, so that way everyone has an opportunity to speak, I would really appreciate that. Ms. Gittens, please.
You asked that like, is that who you are?
I just want to make sure. I called you.
That's okay. It's been a long day. Okay, first of all, thank you all for all that you've done in this report, and you know how important it is to our parents and everyone in the community right now. The thing I want to bring up is the reporting of the incidents. And I know you were saying, I missed part of what you said, Lauren, but I know you said that you're going to be linking the school sites to our main, to the webpage for the district. My question is, can we possibly, when we look at, I think it's slide number 3, shows, like 2 and 3. And 3 shows the situation report for the county. I know there's a lag in time and information. However, if we could have something on our website that shows the real-time information, and the reason is, if I have two children and one's in an elementary school, one's in a high school, one's in a middle, and I'm trying to decide that morning, because this is up to parents to decide, is what we're saying, what they're going to do. So if they look and see, when you go on the website, you click on it and it must be the whole state. So you have to look for your school in this whole list. So what I'm asking is if we could have it just for our schools and have more of an up-to-date, there is a quarantine at, this school. That way, if I'm deciding whether I'm going to send my children to school that morning, I would have someplace very quick and easy to say, okay, this is all right, I'm going to do this. I know there's a lag, because I know we went through this last time, but as much as possible, rather than me as a parent clicking onto the website, then clicking onto my school, then looking for, it's click, 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 click. And I would venture to say a majority of our parents and community do this on their phone. And every click on a phone is a delay, and I can't do this. So to keep us from having so many phone calls and so many questions at the school, if we can do something like this that would show kind of real time.
Sure, we can certainly look into that. The only thing that I would caution is information is good, but people need to have it in context. So even if there is a positive case in a school, unless that family has been contacted that they are affected, yes, it's their decision, obviously, to send their child, but we wouldn't want them to look at that and say, oh my gosh, there's a case in my school, I'm not sending my child, because it might be in a completely different grade level at a completely different part of the building. So I would say that, yes, we absolutely would want to look into it to post it, but then I would also want to have some caveats on there that, just because there's a positive case in your school doesn't necessarily mean that it's unsafe to send your child there.
And I understand that, and I agree with
yeah.
you. I'm more of there's a quarantined class at this school.
Oh, I see. Okay.
In third grade.
Okay.
So then I, as a parent, would be able to say, okay, I either need to find out more information or whatever. No, I agree with you. You don't want to start, everybody all crazy because there was a case here. But a quarantine is kind of the next step to that, in my opinion.
You're asking for any classes that have been quarantined.
And just to even say there are, 2 third-grade classes at, Kickapoo Elementary.
Right, and we'd have to be careful. I don't know that we would identify the grade level. We haven't done that before, and that narrows it down, and so I think that there would be some HIPAA issues. Beth can
Okay.
probably talk more about that. So we
Even
certainly
if it
could say
was
for
at the
school, I would
school.
think that that would be fine, but I'm not sure we would want to narrow it down. But let me look into that, and I can certainly get back to you. We could
Because
figure
I-
out what to develop and
And
put
I-
it right
and
on
I
that
also
page.
think, like with the summer programs, we should have been able to, and I know a lot of them we didn't personally as a district do.
Right.
But parents were not aware too of, cases and quarantines and close downs and all that. So just looking at, and I know
Okay.
keeping with HIPAA.
Yes.
But giving people enough
Information.
information to make those decisions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Anyone else? Ms. Patrick, are you online?
I am. Thank you for your patience as we have worked through some technical difficulties today.
Do you have any questions for the team regarding health?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
So first I want to start by congratulating Beth Witt on being named Employee of the Year. Her ability to navigate the constantly changing protocols around COVID with great compassion, most importantly, tremendous reserves of patience was really, really outstanding. I want Beth to know that I, as a parent and as a school board member, had tremendous confidence in the protections we put in place for our community last year, and that's because of her expertise, leadership, and guidance. So I want to say thank you to Beth. Oh, you're welcome. Next, I want to share Ms. Vaughn's concern about not requiring proof of vaccination to avoid quarantine. The honor system, I just don't have a lot of confidence in the effectiveness of that. I realize our hands are tied, but it is still a concern for me. And then the next is, I have two questions. We had alternative payrolls for staff last year for quarantine and sickness related to COVID, if memory serves me correctly. I don't think they had to use their own sick time. How does that look for this year? Does anyone know?
Sorry, I was waiting on your second question. I don't see oh, Amy does. Dr. Desimore says that she's raising her hand, so I think she knows. Do you know? While she's coming up, I do want to clarify something about quarantine. So we are keeping accurate seating charts, obviously, in the classrooms and when students are with different groups. If there is a positive case, and that information along with the seating charts goes to the DOH has access to the Florida Shots database where they can look up whether or not students or staff members have been vaccinated, and then they will automatically come off the quarantine list if that's the case. So while we don't have the ability to ask those questions, the DOH already implemented that at the end of last year, that anyone that was fully vaccinated would not then appear on a quarantine list because they had had those 2 doses of the vaccine. So we're not saying that there's a positive case in a classroom and then going to that person and saying, have you been vaccinated, because then you can come off of the quarantine list. The DOH is handling all of that with the clearance that they have with that information. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit
That's
of
really
that.
fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, and then here's Dr. D on the alternative days.
In relation to the payroll question, we did have instituted this year what we bargained with our groups was the ability to have the 10 days if you were subject to a quarantine, that you would not have to use your sick leave for those 10 days, and that would be 10 days inside of the entire year. We have not changed that at this point in time, so at this point, that same process is still in play, and unless or until we bargain to do something different. But that is the MOU that is in place at this time.
Fantastic. Thank you. My final question is, I'm a bit concerned about the continuation of contact tracing and quarantine for our students. I understand that this is required because we're still in a pandemic, so I'm not questioning that piece. My concern is centered in the lost learning time for students who have to quarantine. My own daughter had to quarantine 5 times last year. She was in the incredibly fortunate position of having Lee Home Connect or hybrid learning available to her. So lost learning time was really minimized. I know that a lot of students were not in that position last year, and obviously will not be in that position this year. Had that not been available to her, I would have had significant concerns about her ability to manage her classes. So my question, and this is not a question that has to be answered right now, you can provide it in the board update, is what consideration have we given to making up for the lost learning time that students who are forced to quarantine will experience? That's my question, and those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Ms. Stillwell, do we have an answer for that one?
And that's another one that Beth kind of addressed at the beginning, that at this point, per the MOU, it's up to the classroom teacher as to how to handle that. I do know that there have been multiple conversations between academic services and HR, and I believe that they are going to bring that to the bargaining table again. But at this point, we're operating under what we did last year, which is it's up to the classroom teacher to be able to determine the way to deliver those lessons.
Okay, so each individual classroom teacher can decide how they are, if they're going to send a Google Classroom or paperwork, or if they're not going to send anything at all.
Or if they'll Zoom. Yeah.
That's kind of scary. I mean, I think that really needs to be addressed, because we need to make sure that these kids that are quarantined, that have lost that time, are making sure that they are keeping up with what the work is, because it's no fault of their own. So I don't know how we really address that. Dr. Savage or Dr. Spiro?
Thank you. All classes will have, everybody will have Google Classroom still like we did this past year. And similar to this past year, the classroom teacher will determine whether or not they'll allow Zoom or not Zoom for those students who may be quarantined. And yes, we've been speaking, Dr. Pruitt and I have been talking, and she's going to talk to the union again about having a district-wide process on what that could look like. But that's a bargained piece with our friends with TALC. And so that is yet to be decided. So we are under the same premise as we have been this past year.
Okay, so as soon as this takes place, then a Chromebook goes with the child, because I know that was situations last year where they didn't even take the book, so it's like,
Right.
okay, now what am I doing? So I think we really need to pay attention to that. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, I agree with that concern, because I did hear several times last year of incidents where the students were quarantined, and it was at the time we had the,
Home Connect.
I can't even think of the name of it now.
Home Connect.
Home Connect. And the students were told that they could not partake in Home Connect, even though they were told that they couldn't come because of quarantine. And it was kind of mixed up. So I hope that this year we get that organized, because it's not, if a child's sitting in the classroom that's quarantined and they're not the ones that are positive, then you are actually penalizing them and their education.
And I understand, which is why we're bringing it to the table, because we heard the same message last year as well.
Yeah, so I do appreciate that, if you will, see what we can do about that, because I know you don't want the parents to be surprised when the kids come home with their report cards and they're like, what the heck is this? My student's an A student, now they have a C? I mean, why? And then there's no explanation for that. So it's just not right for those kids. And I understand the teachers are doing a phenomenal job, and life is rough, but we need to make sure that we are keeping up with them.
And I understand their concerns. It is, obviously, it is a challenge to balance as a classroom teacher, and so that's why I say over and over again, my hat's off to our classroom teachers, because that is quite an art form to be able to balance face-to-face and students in front of you as well.
Sure. Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And just, it needs to be consistent. I think
Yeah.
I found out through different avenues and parents and that it was different throughout the district. And I think there needs to be some kind of consistency, or at least some guidelines that the principal rolls out at each school that everybody kind of adheres to and allows time for makeup work. There was not enough time for kids that missed, 10 days of school, and then they come back and then they leave again. So that consistency is really, really important. My other question really actually has to do with question that I found it, I watched last year, I think it was Hillsborough County, they had, and we did too actually, did it later, but had the expert health officials here, and all due respect, your information is great and everything you've done is great, and I'm not lessening that, in fact, at all. Thank you. I'm glad we have you, actually. But I think just for the community's sake, hearing from the professionals what is going on, up to date, up to speed, speaks volumes and is important. And I don't know if we could have something like that. I doubt we could have it before school starts, but maybe shortly thereafter, just to give us a temperature of what's going on. We're being told Florida's the hot spot. Are we the hot spot? That's it, coming from the health officials and the experts in that COVID community is really, I think, would just be really great information for the community. So if that's something I would like to have a little more of that.
Absolutely. We can talk with the DOH and have them come.
Yeah.
Last year they did it, I think, over Zoom. So this year we can have them in person.
Right. Yeah, because I thought it was actually really great last year too. So, and then a couple questions that I know just for parents' sake, like if parents are in doubt that morning, they go to school and their kid doesn't want to really go to school, and they make up excuses. I found out that was a lot of that going on this year as well, and kids and parents kind of take it's opportunity, right? So, maybe a vacation early before school ends, because we had a short summer. I know that happened. But anyways, testing. So if a kid, like their temperature, if a parent, they've tested it and it really isn't high, but the kid says, I still don't feel good, blah, blah, blah. The testing, temperatures are taken by the nurse at the school. Parents can say that can happen. How would that go about, like, exactly for a parent?
So are you asking the comparison of the temperature between
Yeah,
the
their temperature,
home and
not
the
not a COVID test. I'm not asking about that. I'm asking, like, their temperature is borderline. Let's say it's 99, but by the time they get to school, it could be what, like 101. But they don't say anything.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. So that would be up to either the teacher or the student to come forth and, say I'm not feeling well, or I'm feeling hot, I need to go to the clinic. When they come to the clinic, then we would definitely check the temperature. We would assess for any other symptoms that they might have. We ask them questions, what's going on? How are you feeling? That way we can determine, does it fit into our COVID protocol for low risk or high risk symptoms, or maybe is it something else going on with the student?
Okay, so, and that leads me to another question. Like, so last year, do we have enough resources in these, for the nurses and so forth? Because I can see, that could be a very crowded room. Especially when people start saying, or students start saying, I don't feel good, and I mean, do we have enough beds in there? Do we have enough privacy, and do they have enough help? I just can see that it can be very busy.
Yes, absolutely. And some of our schools were very busy. We will continue with our isolation rooms as we did this past year. So that alleviates some of the crowdedness within the clinic because we have a separate room that we can send our symptomatic students to. It is staffed separately as well, so that alleviates some of the pressure off of our clinic assistant and our nurses. And then we do train backups in the schools because of COVID to be able to step in and to help if it becomes a really busy day.
Great, thank you, because I could really see that it would be very busy.
Perfect. Are there any other questions? Ms. Fisher?
No, I have no
Anything?
questions.
Ms. Morgan?
I have none.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Ms.
This
Vaughn?
is very quick. Do we still have a district COVID task force?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Who are they exactly?
So the three of us, all of the chiefs, Cindy McClung, Irma Lancaster, Gwen, right here. Dave LaRosa joins us occasionally when it comes to athletics. So those are the core folks.
Oh, okay. Just curious.
Yep. And then schools will send us information of what things like that they're looking to do, and then we'll review them, and Beth will offer suggestions if there's ways we think we can make it more safe.
You meet
If we need to.
regularly, or you just meet as needed?
So right now, we're meeting as needed. During the year, though, especially at the height last year, we were meeting, well, at the beginning, we were meeting every day, and then we got down to 3 days a week. And then towards the end of the year, when things were kind of wrapping up, it was intermittent. It's been intermittent this summer, but the discussion is to kind of pick it back up in the next week or two so that we would have regular meetings, especially for the beginning of the year, so we can field questions and provide a source of information for the schools.
Okay, because when this all started, the group that we had members of the community, TALC, SPALC, as well, anticipating, as many news sources report, that there's going to be an additional spike in September, August and September, when school is back in session. I'm just wondering if we might not have kind of a lineup of
People ready to
more
go?
emergency, or, I mean,
Yes, and we do have at our disposal, I mean, the DOH has been amazing, local pediatric groups, as well as Golisano Children's Hospital and Lee Health. So we have a meeting with them every other week. Beth and I do, and Dave has joined those. So we do those over the phone, and we go through things like, what do the COVID numbers look like? What do the flu numbers look like? Is there anything else anybody needs to know about? How can, to your point about vaccines, one of the discussions was, how can we, work together? How can the pediatricians' offices make sure that their clients know about the vaccine, and what are they doing, and what's the hospital doing? So those are the kinds of things that we meet about every other week as well.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. One more question for Ms.
Yes,
Giordano?
actually, it made me think about this. Are we limiting sport events, attendance, how is that going to be? So is it,
Not at this point.
great,
We are
thank
not.
you.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher, did you have?
Yes, so, thank you, Mrs. Vaughn, for asking about the COVID task force. So the COVID task force, the responsibility of the COVID task force is to be ready to act in case there are disruptions and issues caused by the COVID pandemic. So our COVID task force primarily is you guys, and you meet with local health officials and people who have more specific information to that. Okay. So then the COVID task force, as it exists in this district, there's no special criteria for being a member, or?
Well, we were looking at division, division and district leads, and then obviously Beth for her background, and then safety and security because there was health, and then Irma because of what we need to communicate out. So, but really it was a core group of people who were helping to make decisions when there were questions that were asked by the schools or by the departments or that. So it was really internal workings where the task force itself that Ms. Vaughn is talking about was more outward facing. What is it that we're doing with students? How are we handling families? Those kinds of things. This is a little bit more internal where a school will come and say, we want to do a field trip. Well, okay, what are your protocols right now for the field trip? Are you going to have a seating chart on a bus? Are you going to, so those are the kinds of things then that we would help the schools set up or ask the questions of to make sure that whatever it was they were implementing in the schools was following the protocols that we had set as a district, and then if there were any additional suggestions, we were able to give them those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question, and then we're moving on. Go ahead, Ms.
Okay,
Gittens.
just quickly, do the schools have a task force or something within the schools, a group that looks at things that are happening in the school with COVID and making the decisions and then contacting you guys, or is everything handled at the district?
Well, a lot of times the schools will handle their own things, but if there's ever a question, then they'll roll it up to the district level. And a lot of them did roll it up to the district level last year because they wanted to know how other schools were handling things. I don't know if there's any, they just wanted to make sure that there was some consistency there. And so a lot of times it would roll up through their chief, and then the chief would bring it to the team, and then we would discuss it, and then the chief would send it back down the chain to the schools.
And I agree with my fellow coworkers that we have to have more consistency among the schools this year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for being here and for putting this together. I really appreciate all your hard work. And so next we have Miss Cindy McClung, who will be coming up to assist us on prioritizing workshop topics.
Madam Chair, may I interrupt for a second?
Sure. Go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
I just want you all to know that I have a 4 o'clock hard stop, so if the meeting goes past 4 o'clock, I will not still be here at that time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody this afternoon. So we have several items to cover on our agenda in terms of making decisions as to whether or not you would like these items to come forward as a workshop, a briefing, or addressed in another way. Excuse me. So I'm going to scroll down here for just a second. So the first item on the list is how the district handles non-renewal of effective and highly effective teachers. And that was a request from Ms. Morgan, if you would like to add some detail to that.
Well, I had a response to the effect that there's, the contract specifies non-renewal, but I think that we need to do something to beef up the communications within the schools and amongst the schools, because I just got the impression this year a lot of teachers were left sort of high and dry, not knowing exactly how to proceed. Nobody advocated for them, or some, it was just sort of the, I don't know. I just felt like The obligation is in the contract, but the execution is not consistent, I guess the best way to say it. Execution is not consistent across the district. It creates confusion, consternation, et cetera.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, Mrs. Ford.
I would say I've heard similar things, and I would put thumbs up for keeping this as one of our upcoming topics. As sooner the better.
Okay. Any other comments?
I concur. I think this needs to be discussed. I've heard several stories.
Okay, if we could have a quick thumbs up if you would like this to stay on the list. There we go. Okay, thank you very much. I'll put a Y next to that one. The next topic is enshrining interest-based bargaining in board policy. Again, Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, I wasn't here when interest-based bargaining was introduced, but I know it was a very difficult period before we did it. I know it's been very successful for a long time. I know it has gotten us through some extraordinarily difficult challenges with leadership or at the leadership level. I think that and I understand our process is unique. I feel like we need to respect the relationship between management and labor by shrining a process that works really well in policy, and that can only be abrogated if a supermajority of the board wishes to change it.
Comments?
Ms. Patrica, do you have any comments?
Thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Vaughn.
Well, I'm a thumbs up on the last item.
Thank you. I meant to ask you that, too.
I definitely support this item as well.
Thank you, and I apologize, Ms. Patrica, I forgot you were there.
Yeah, I did too. Thank you. Ms. Vaughn, I'm sorry.
I was particularly interested in that word enshrining. That sounds like that we want, and I know what a policy is, and obviously it's something we need to discuss, but yeah, I just, it struck me as very strangely worded, and I almost got the feeling that it was out of a sense of concern or worry that somehow things were changing, and let's be sure that things don't change. To be discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone?
Comments?
No other comments?
Ms. Fisher?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Attorney Dupree-Bruno to address that. Do we have a policy that addresses that, or is that just part of our, not just, but is it part of our agreement with Talc and Spout?
It's the process that we've used in negotiating the Talc and Spout bargaining agreements. So it's not in our policy. It's just an interest-based process that is a very specific process in how you go about to try to reach some type of consensus or agreement with the union.
So what would be the benefit of putting it in school board policy? Or does it?
I think that, and it's Ms. Morgan's thought process, but I'm assuming that the reason that you would request something like that was to, for lack of a better word, to codify exactly how we move forward with those types of negotiations, that we use this particular type of process and use, in negotiating.
Thank you, yes.
Is that correct? And Ms. Fisher, were you?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what our attorney just said. If we're putting it in our policy, doesn't that mean that, okay, how can I put this? It's a two-way street. When we do our bargaining, it's the union, it's management, the district. if it's in policy, wouldn't that in effect put the union over a barrel? If they, leadership changes, ideas change. So in other words, if we put it in policy, would we not be dictating to the union how it will be, whether they like it or not?
Yeah, that would be a policy that would be dictating how this process would move forward. So technically, if you do have a leadership change that decides not to do that, then you could have a problem. Either side could have a leadership change that decides not to implement that particular process.
So I guess the bottom line is this something that we would be interested in getting more information on to even come up with any ideas? I mean, is what we're looking at. So is there?
So it would be a discussion which, if you wanted to invite TALC members, TALC leadership, you could certainly invite them to have discussion with that if you had it in a workshop.
Okay, so.
May I jump in, please?
Yes, please.
Ms. Patrica.
This is a conversation that I've had with South and South in my one-on-ones, and it is something that they definitely support. It was raised as Dr. Atkins was retiring, and we were looking to bring a new superintendent into the district, and codifying this practice of the district to make sure that it is carried forward regardless of leadership now, next year, 5 years from now, is important from my perspective. It was important from Cal's perspective. And we are in an incredibly unique, blessed position here in Lee County. I'm sure that as you speak with your colleagues across the state, you hear them use the word impasse quite frequently. And oftentimes the union is at odds with the district. And because of interest-based bargaining, we're able to avoid those very issues here in Lee County. So it's something that has worked tremendously well. And again, given the change in leadership, both now and as we engage in a permanent superintendent search, I think this is really important for us to really talk about and learn more about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
I'm happy to hear more about it, but listening to what Ms. Patrica just said, it goes back to what I surmised in my statement just a few moments ago. I'm going to be very honest. In my one-on-ones with the union, as actually retired union member and a former union representative, I'm just going to say that there have been times when I've said, what's wrong with this picture, as I defend teachers and other staff, and I say, I am sounding more like the worker, and you are sounding more like management. And so perhaps the enshrining, codifying, again, I would be happy to hear more about it. But I don't like the idea of the premise of this, because we have a new superintendent now and we're looking for another one. Let's put this in policy now. I'm open to listening, but I'm not for this enshrining of a policy that would have to do with both the union and us as a district.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess, can we just see who would
Yes.
care to hear about this and then move? Because I know
Thank
there's
you.
a lot on this.
So if we could do it, Ms. Gittens, did you have a comment first?
Just a quick one. In looking at the list, I'm not adverse to, anything that's on here. My concern is priority. And adding another thing is going to put something else in a lower priority. And if that's the case, then I'm not interested at this time.
Okay. Yes, sorry, Ms. Giovanelli.
Actually, I would agree with what Ms. Gittens just said. I don't think it's a priority. Obviously, I don't know that we need policy on this, because I think it becomes too binding when you're negotiating. And I think that if we wanted to have a workshop on it or a briefing on it, maybe that might, and just understanding the interest-based bargaining and leave it at that versus policy. I think if we start asking staff to do policy on something like that right now is not, when there's other priorities, I think that we have to really look at the list. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's what I was saying. So if we're interested in just learning about this.
Right.
That's one thing, because truthfully, I don't know a whole bunch about this subject, so that would be something that I would be interested in learning about. But as far as prioritizing, and even with all of these that we're putting on here, we're going to fit them in when we're working on those such topics, because this list is just continuing and continuing. And that's why we keep on adding more things onto our plates, and it's like it's never ending. So and I know, and I understand that is the job that we have, but we have to put a dent in these somehow. And Ms. Fisher, were you going to say something about this particular one?
Yeah, there's a statute that addresses employee contracts for school districts in Florida. So it didn't really mention the union, but I would be interested in at least gathering some information to find out, from the FEA point of view, what is the main focus for them in supporting our contracts with our teachers?
Okay, so
that is governed by
Thank you.
statute.
So if we could do a quick consensus on, at this point, just learning more about the process, and then at that workshop, then if you chose to go forward with talking about policy, you'd be able to. But for right now, it is just to learn more about the process.
And Ms. Morgan, I know you brought that to the forefront, so would that?
That's
okay.
fine. Thank
So
you. Thumbs up?
Does everybody agree on learning?
Okay. Thank you. So could you keep those, please, because I'm trying to.
Something to.
So, and I would just add too, the interest-based process is not just limited to bargaining with the union. Interest-based process could be used for decision-making. It could be used for the board in its decision-making. So there's a lot of things. It's kind of like the collaborative process. So I just want to throw it out there.
And I think that's why Ms. Morgan had brought that up when we were doing other things. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I didn't have a chance to count, and I did see a thumbs down. I saw at least a sideways. So if we could put your thumbs again, please. I see 1,
3, 4.
2, 3, 4 thumbs up, 2 sideways, and 1 down.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so that is a majority said yes. Thank you. The next one is the Guardian Program. Ms. Giovanelli, would you like to expand on that?
Well, right now with the budgeting going, we're in the middle of our budgeting. We're almost about to vote on that in the next month. So, I mean, my interest was what money are we leaving on the table, and that was the information that I wanted to, bring forward and find out more about. And what the appetite is on this board regarding the Guardian program. I believe that all safety, as much as it can be heightened as, for our students. And so I don't want to leave any money on the table that protects our students, really, is the bottom line for me.
And I think if I know Mrs. Giovanelli, you were not here at the last meeting that we had, and that was spoken about just a little bit regarding the Guardian, and that I think most of us were wanting more information, or how the sheriff and how the other departments feel about the Guardian program and the money and everything else.
Yeah, and I'm actually working on that meeting with Senator Rodriguez and also Sheriff Carmine, so with the superintendent. So we've got something scheduled, or working on scheduling that and getting that information back to bring it back to the board. Like I said, I believe in enhancement. I don't believe in doing away with our SRO program. So my husband's a police officer, so I would never want that taken out of our schools ever. So, but I think it's opportunity for some of the charter schools to be able to capitalize on that. They've all asked about having a guardian versus the actually SRO. So I think that it's something as a board we should look at. It's a community thing. It's not just
Right, and
district thing.
that was spoken about as well regarding the charter schools and having that conversation, but Dr. Savage didn't share with us that you all were doing something because we just heard that here.
And it just happened literally last week, so,
Okay.
yeah, I mean.
This just happened this morning,
conversation.
so
Oh,
we
okay.
didn't hear about that this
No, I
morning.
didn't, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. So quick thumbs up if you would like to get more information around the Guardian program.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica.
Ms.
Okay, so that's
Fisher?
it. Ms. Fisher's?
Information?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for doing that, Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you.
Can't type. Okay. Ms. Patrica, the next item was critical race theory. If you would like to expand on that, please.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the political impact of that topic on our schools. I believe that to a certain extent, the term is being used inaccurately with reference to the school district and what occurs in our schools and in our classrooms every day. So, I mentioned this before, the LGBT issue kind of blew up in the boardroom, and I don't think we were prepared for it. At least I can say I individually was not prepared for it. I think we've got a pretty good sort of heads up that this is coming our way, and I'd like us to have fact-based, real information so that we can answer the public's questions with regards to this.
I had brought this up before as well. Let me just take this off a sec. My thought on this is, I agree we need to kind of get more information about it. I don't agree that we should have staff saying to us, this is what's what. I believe it should be whether it's a panel or something, and have some of the maybe parents or community or whatever on that panel as well, because otherwise we will see it from one perspective. And to me, it's finding out what do you think about this, and what do you know, and what do you know, and taking steps to get closer together, because otherwise we've got point A and point B, and never the twain shall meet. And if the only time that we hear from the community or parents that are on one side or the other is in public comment, then we're not really learning what we need to know about why people feel like they do. So that's my thing. Yes, we should talk about it. I said that before, but we need to hear it from a more 50,000 view and all sides and all aspects of it.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Mrs. Dupree-Bruno, do we not have a state statute now that outlaws CRT in our schools? And that's my understanding, in which case it's really a moot point and a waste of time for us to discuss something that the governor has signed into law in Florida.
So the district follows the sunshine standards, and it's my understanding that the governor has made it very clear in terms of his position on critical race theory. This was brought to the Florida Department of Education, and the board reviewed it and voted on it, that it would not be included in the curriculum.
Right. Okay, and it's for that reason that I would say, no, we don't need to discuss this. I think there's definitely a lot of misunderstanding. When I say in the community, I don't mean just here, I mean in the global community, on exactly what it is. And quite frankly, although I think it's important for upper level students especially, and college students to understand, especially if they're majoring in political science, government economics, those kinds of courses, the idea of critical race theory is really a very high level philosophy kind of thing. And yeah, it is. And if there are discussions on how we as a district teach curriculum or have curriculum on race. I see in our curriculum guide, we're going to be offering African American history, and I saw a lot of, I'm not sure what all in the curriculum guide, maybe Dr. Spiro can help us, will be dealing with multiculturalism, but I'm going to guess, is that not right, Dr. Spiro, that none of it teaches anything about critical race theory. Can you address that, and what courses we actually have that will address race and ethnicity diversity?
Good afternoon. As Attorney DuPay-Bruno stated earlier, we are bound by the standards. We do teach the standards in our classrooms, and then it is not critical race theory, but rather the standards. And then I could give you a list, because I really would need to look back and see the diversity that you're talking about, those type of diverse courses. I can certainly get a list of that and send it to the board in our weekly update.
Yeah, because there was a long, long list in the curriculum guide, but surely we're not offering all of.
Right, so there are courses that are certainly approved, but not
Approved
being
courses.
offered, correct?
Right,
So I will give you courses that are approved and being offered for the upcoming school year that I'll share with the board.
Yeah, so that's why I don't think it's a priority.
Ms. Gittens?
I think Ms.
Ms. Fisher.
Fisher?
Fisher had her hand up.
So that being said, critical race theory is not a new concept. It was introduced in the 70s. And I think that recently I've had a lot of people approach me about that. So I've done a little bit of research, and I had a long text exchange with a citizen, not one of our school board visitors, but a citizen who was kind of accusatory about what we're doing in making some students feel guilty for who they are. And I think that although we probably don't need more information because Dr. Spiro has all of that information, I did talk to a couple of teachers, one recently retired who's experienced in American history and political science, et cetera. And he said, no, that's not what we're teaching. And, he said, we can, and you know who it is, Dr. Spiro. So I think that we need to try to work with our staff and put something together just to explain to people exactly what is happening in our schools. And in order to do that, I think we do need to include our teachers who are actually delivering that curriculum, because I think they can provide a lot of valuable information in their lesson plans and the conversations that they have and the materials that they use. And I think maybe that would help clarify some of the concern and distress that we're hearing about from the public. Thank you.
That's a great idea. Ms. Morgan?
And I would agree. I spoke to a Rotary earlier this year who wanted to know what we were teaching in history. And I think if we can put on our website links to some of its links to the state standards, but also showing how the district embeds those standards in its curriculum so that people can actually see what the content is that's being taught. Because when I talk to people and I showed them that basically we're working for source documents, that kind of thing, they were really sort of set back. They had no clue what's really happening. And I think if we give them a resource, a reference to what is actually happening, that might help. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
Ms. Giovanelli.
I would agree with that, actually. I think providing information and making a statement and having the access from the district, access for everyone to see, to actually go to the curriculum and would be helpful, because just because we say it's not happening, they don't take our word for that. So, and we do say that, but I think they have to see it for themselves. And I think that giving them that opportunity is what we should be doing. It's educating them on what we're doing.
Thank you. Attorney DuPay-Bruno, did you have your hand up?
Thank you. From a legal standpoint, I would always advise the board to be proactive rather than reactive. So if we can address things prior to it becoming an issue where at that point it lands on my desk, I think it's best that, the board do some loss mitigation, if we will.
Ms. Patrica, did you have additional comments? Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. What Ms. Giovanelli just said is really where my concern originates. There is a narrative out there that CRT exists, K-12 education, and when you ask your school board, they're going to tell you there is no CRT in our schools. Don't believe them. That is the narrative that's being pushed right now by political operatives. And I think it's really important to get ahead of this. And I love the idea of putting something together that is source-based so that it's all in one place. We can learn about it so we can answer questions in great depth and then push constituents to the source document so that they can read for themselves and see for themselves exactly what's occurring in our classrooms. Thank you.
As a reminder, our curriculum maps are currently available to the public. So part of this may just be a little communication to raise awareness of how to be able to find those. But if there is additional information that I'm hearing, you may want some additional information. And I just want to clarify, so I'm sure what you're asking for. But what I think I'm hearing is that you don't really need a workshop, that you would like staff to put together maybe a one-pager with some additional information about how we are addressing topics in the district. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Thank you. And I see.
Yes, but let Ms.
I know Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Morgan. Yes.
Okay, I'm agreeing to a point with everything that you all are saying and what Ms. Patrica just said. The question that comes to my mind is, we put together a Q&A. Do we know what their questions are? Do we know specifically what we are saying, no, we don't do this or we do that? So that's why there's got to be some way of connecting and finding out what are the major questions that the community has. Because if we go answering what we think is the question and they have something different, we're just stirring the pot and not listening. So somewhere along the line, there's got to be a listening piece where we know what are your questions, and maybe we request them on a site or something, or send in an email or do something and let them know, give us your specific questions about this. So we're answering what their questions are, not up here at this level and they're down here. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Morgan?
What was I going to say? I have forgotten, so I'll take a pass.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, so is there agreement that you would like to gather some information from the community before a packet or one sheet is prepared? Can I see a quick thumbs up on that? Do you wish to gather some information? Okay, and Ms. Patrica?
I think a survey is a great idea, but I'm not comfortable with just receiving a one-pager. I think that being able to point the public in the direction of a video where this is discussed by staff and a source document will be more exhaustive than simply a one-pager. Thank you.
Can I ask, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. And Dr. Spiro, tell me if no to this, but can we talk about the meeting that was had with the citizens prior, and that may help, because I did attend a meeting, and you can tell them about it.
Did you want to respond, or do you want me to?
Yes, by all means, Dr. Spiro.
Okay, so thank you. So we did have a group of over 40 citizens that came recently and reviewed our ELA curriculum. We had a meeting and they reviewed all of them. Our team was here and the public was here as well, and they are putting together feedback based around that meeting, and I believe this was probably 2 weeks ago, around that time. So they're putting together feedback, and they're going to be submitting that to the board and to myself as well, just around the feedback they received from that ELA board-adopted materials. Dr. Savage, anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you handled it there, Dr. Spire, but just be available to answer any questions regarding to what you just said.
Well,
Let me just finish by saying I did attend, and I walked around and spoke to members of the community that were there. It was very organized, and the materials were set out in the front of the room, and they had rubrics, and they looked through materials and curriculum, and went over their rubrics, and then we'll get the information back from them. I found it personally helpful to be in the room, to talk to people, to say, what is it that you're looking for? And here's where I am and what I think and believe. And the staff and Dr. Spire on his team spoke to them and told them where we're at, that, curriculum is not set right here. Curriculum is set up above and sent down, and we, follow it. That's what the statutes are for. I found it very interesting, though, to be in the room to talk to people, to find out why they were so, adamant about certain things, and to be able to get those steps where I take one step and you take one and find out how we can get through this. So.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
What I think was the issue, and I know, looking at Ms. Fisher's face too, it would have been nice for all of us to have known the date and the time, so that we would also have had an opportunity to be in that room to hear what people are saying versus just one. I mean, we had heard that, there may be, you may be having some people come in, which they come in all the time. But when you have a large group coming in, and it's kind of sounds almost like a forum that some were a part of and some were not. I think that, to me, we should have all known about it.
So I would just like to address that part from the academic services point. So I had community members that reached out to my team and asked to review the materials. We have a process for that, so we actually met ahead of time to find out how many people were coming. We made sure we had a room reserved for them, and we told them this is all the materials that we have available, to make sure that we had everything they were looking for as well. We developed a process together to make sure that we met their needs also, and it was with the community. So I did not invite any board members to the meeting. It was a reach out from our community members, which is a normal practice. If a community member reaches out to our team, we certainly want to meet with them. We want to be responsive to them. So from academic services, that's how that meeting went.
And may I please say, this was not something where everyone else was not invited. A community member reached out to me and said, we're doing this, you should stop by, and that was all. It was not a district sanctioned thing that everyone was left out.
Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Giovanelli.
Okay, so then, am I to understand then that groups of community citizens, as many as 40, reach out to our departments and can gather information, be educated? Is this like a textbook review committee or a curriculum review committee?
So we had community members that reached out to us to specifically ask to review our English language arts materials. And so we did share with them all the board-adopted English language arts materials. Our next adoption is mathematics, and that'll be another opportunity for any community member to be part of that. It's posted on the district webpage as well, how community members can get involved, the timeline, as well as the same with our English language arts. We try to post as much of that material as we can online also.
Okay, so I just, on behalf of some of my other colleagues and myself, it would be nice for us to be informed that something that big is taking place so that we can also be privy to the information, since we are out there and have to respond to the entire community. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. Ms. Vaughn.
And real quick, so actually, I want to just thank the district for allowing that opportunity for them. And I think it's great in that the community has that collaboration, right? So, and I hope to see more of that. So I just appreciate the accommodations, and I look forward to the outcome or your opinions of what you are going to bring forward to us. And then I think as a board, we can embrace it. How's that? I think that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, and I've never, having taught ELA for 38 years and gone through countless book adoptions, one in this state and many in Texas, which has a very similar process. I really feel the same way as a couple of my board colleagues that I don't think it's appropriate to have one board member there giving her opinion. I think if...
Point of order.
Wait a minute.
Point of order, Madam Chair,
The
please.
order has been called, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Okay.
My point of order is, it was nothing that was excluding anyone. A private citizen said, we are meeting, stop by if you want to. There was not an official, this is going to happen. It wasn't on a, list somewhere and left out everyone else. And let me add to that, I have met with several different groups at my own discretion in my district and around the county, because I personally wanted to understand where people are coming from with this topic. There was no exclusion of anyone.
I think Ms. Gittens, because I'm going to let Ms. Vaughn finish what she was saying, but I think because of the fact that you stated that yourself and Dr. Savage attended.
No,
that
I
made
didn't
it
say
sound-
that. No.
Oh, then I misunderstood you saying
When
that, 'cause
I
that's what
went,
heard.
I had no idea who was going to be there.
Okay, I'm going to let Ms. Vaughn go ahead and finish your comments.
Okay,
please.
well, no matter how this shook out, even by an invitation by a member of the community, it just doesn't seem right, because the person who was there is representing the book. Please let me finish. This is my perception. Ms. Gittens, you're very big into how people perceive. My perception is that others of us, and I'm not just talking about me, were excluded. And if it came to be that there was going to be a board member there, I think there should have been a way that others could have been involved, or it's just the perception of the whole thing that I'm objecting to, and the fact that obviously it's very obvious that each of the 7 of us have very, very different opinions, very different backgrounds, very different ways that we approach things. And I think that if we have groups that are coming in to do reviews, that it should be they are reviewing, and if we want to sit in the peanut gallery, so to speak, fine, but that the interactions in that official, and it is official, it took place, it wasn't like somebody had a bunch of books at their house and they had tea and crumpets, and here, let's look at the books. It was here in the district, and I think moving forward, because of the perceptions, that we should have more of a handle on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Morgan, and then I would really like to move us on. Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to clarify. First, I want to say thanks to Dr. Spiro and his team, because I did hear that they were amazing. This is part of what we do as the education system. We educate our community. And it's also part of what we always say we need to do a better job of, and that is telling our story. So I just want to say that, disappointed that I wasn't informed about it, yes, but I appreciate the effort, and I think it's very important. And I know that Ms. Brooks, with the mental health arena, does much of the same thing and meets a lot with other people and educates them about what we're doing, and has formed tremendous partnerships, which are part of telling our story and part of doing our job. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Mrs. Morgan?
I'm just trying to figure out what this conversation has to do with the things that we're supposed to be discussing, and we're not even halfway through the list. It's half an hour till 4 o'clock. Two of us have a time certain meeting at 4 o'clock. We need to get back on topic, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Morgan. So first, I'd like to say that I think it's been made very clear, and staff understands that if a group has an interest in a large group is going to be in the building, the board will be informed. So I think that part was made very clear. The second part, going back to the critical race theory, Ms. Patrika, I'm wondering if it would be acceptable if staff would come and meet with you to develop a plan for collecting information, and then the type of information that that you feel, the type of packet or whatever type of information you feel needs to be made available, and then we could bring a proposal back to the full board and see if they would like to move forward.
That sounds wonderful. If my colleagues are in agreement, thank you.
Okay, could I get a thumbs up from everyone else if you're in agreement?
I don't know what of, but I can.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fisher? Okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 thumbs up, 1 down, 1 sideways. And Ms. Gittens, I'm sorry, I couldn't see. What was your?
I'm really not quite sure what the question was.
The question was that staff would meet with Ms. Patrika to clarify how we would conduct, or collect information from the community in order to put together some sort of informative package. We would come forward with a plan and bring that back to the board to see if that meets the needs.
No, I think that we all should have input in that. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I would agree. Actually, I would like to wait on their, I think they're sending their opinion. I'd rather wait. Can we just table this a little bit longer? And
Like to bring this back to the next time?
Yes.
So let's table it so that way we can go out and get more community input as well.
Yes. Maybe the survey.
That we need to not just have one specific group, that we need to have the other area groups as well participate in all of this so that you have a bigger, broader perspective.
Okay, so there's been a request to table. Is everyone in agreement that we will table this and bring it back? Ms. Patrika?
The point is to get out ahead of it. And the more we push it down the road, the less likely we are to get out ahead of it.
Okay. Is that, can I see thumbs? And Ms. Patrika, is that, how would you vote? Or what would your consensus be? No. Okay. Would everyone else like to table this?
Yes.
Yes, so it is.
Can we just say tabling it until we get information from the community?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Any of us can bring this back up at any time, so we don't have to wait for the next meeting with Ms.
Right.
McClung. So.
And it will actually, it'll stay on here, so if it's not brought back up before, it would be brought back up 2 meetings from now.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next item was the FY22 school calendar. Ms. Fisher.
Yes, so a student came forward and talked about the 21-22 calendar and the fact that the semester break takes place after the holiday break. So we have almost completing the semester, taking the holiday break, and then coming right back that next week and taking finals. And so I think the student requested that we review that, and I think that makes perfect sense based on my long experience in schools on those years that we have had the holiday break and then come back to finals. That has not been conducive to good success and good learning with our students. So if we could take another look at that calendar and arrange the days so that we would be able to have the holiday break after the semester break, that might really be well received not only by our students, but by the teachers also.
Thank you, Mrs. Gittens.
Yeah, I totally agree. Having been a teacher and winter break is shortened and not focused because you're worried about coming back, taking testing. And I thought that we had gotten it to the point where that would not happen if we started soon enough. And I think that's a question for the superintendent. Is it too late? Can we adjust that with our days? And maybe it's something he needs to look at with staff and get back to us.
Yes, I would have to look into this, meet with Dr. Pruitt and the calendar work that's been done. I know it's been board approved, but I just need to do a little bit more research and get back to you on this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Who's our
you.
board calendar person?
Yeah.
That was Ms. Gittens, was the calendar person. Were you not?
But not for this last one. I was last time.
It was me.
It was her. This is Ms. Patrica.
I don't think that's very funny.
Sorry, Ms. Patrica.
Y'all do.
Well,
It was you.
it is funny.
So my understanding is that Dr. Savage will check with the committee and that will be continued.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then maybe if we could, I know Ms. Morgan has a lot of the ones down below. Is there any of these, Ms. Morgan, that we could possibly get an update in our, in our weekly reports? Are there any of those here that you see that?
One of them is moving non-action meetings to training rooms. I mean, that doesn't
That's an
have to
easy
be
one.
discussed. That's simple, yes or no. The others, I think, are of interest to everybody, so.
And we did have one more before that. We had one other one that was the school district obligations regarding the transgender students in Title IX. That was Ms. Vaughn.
Right, that's why I was trying to get the other ones that could be like a yes or no answer quickly.
Okay.
So we can move them,
Okay.
through those?
Okay, so we'll come back to that one then. Okay, so status of Lee Virtual School. I know that we did have an update on Lee Virtual in terms of data in one of our previous. Was this an additional information that you were requesting, Ms. Morgan?
When did we have an update on LVS?
When we did the data at the end of the year, and I'd have to go back and tell you the
Showing number of
date.
students, et cetera, right?
No, that was different. Yes, so you're talking about how many students for the upcoming year and the plan for the upcoming year. Is that the information you would like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's different. Okay. All right, so Ms. Giovanelli.
Yeah, so, and we've had highlights from other schools, and that kind of stopped, and so I anticipated that we would have something similar to that, as well as what the plan is for next year, and how the plan, what happened last year, because that was a whole new world for Lee Virtual School, right? So I think it's good for us to know, and it's also good for the community to be aware of that option and what actually happens in Lee Virtual School. So I think it's really important and priority, and as we're coming into this new year, I'm very curious on what the numbers are, what the plan is, the resources, and I mean they have part-time students as well, and how that evolves with their system. I want to make sure that Lee Virtual, I think Lee Virtual School is going to be the next way of educating students, and so I think it's really important that we're on our game, really. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so is there a consensus that the board would like an update on Lee Virtual School to include some information from last year and the results there, and then the information going for the plan for this year? Ms. Patrica?
Yes, please. Also, there was an item that I placed in the parking lot that's not there.
Okay, I'll be happy to add that. What item is that? And I'd be happy to add it.
Sorry, I come on loud, so I can't see what's happening on it. Utilizing the consultant who presented at the FSBA conference regarding improvement of board relations. I think it was called the 10 Laws of Board Leadership or something along those lines.
Okay, I put this at the bottom, and we will come back to it. Thank you.
Ms. McClung, I believe I could find that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll come back to Mrs. Morgan's next one, was the ops update.
Yeah, we can drop that because that's going to be part of the superintendent's report to us, I assume.
What is that?
Correct?
Operations?
Dr. Savage, is that correct? That will be included in your briefing tomorrow?
Yes, I will have a proposal during our phase 1 concept where I will address that piece. And I could also address during that time period the default setting if that were not to be the case. So I can make sure to add that into tomorrow at the briefing.
Thank you. Okay, and the next one is the grade 3 FSA data aggregated by demographic and school, and how we're using federal funds to address the challenges.
And I believe that's already been scheduled.
Correct.
Pretty sure. No? No?
I'm happy to say it.
I thought this
my
was, I thought it was as well.
I don't know.
So can we have consensus? You would like that information? On it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. The next item is moving the non-action meetings to training rooms.
I think this can be solved by a simple, if staff gives us what would be involved in terms of providing real-time feed if we were to use one of the training rooms for our meetings. I think that's the bottom line problem. So if staff could just give us some information about what would be involved in making the move, I think it would be easier for us to make a decision.
And you're specifically workshops, is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
And I believe, if I'm not, incorrect, that the next couple of weeks we're going to be out of here anyway, so that they can update technology in this room. So, but I do agree with Ms. Morgan, we have to have the same technology ability if we are to do that. And then make sure that we have space for, if it's a briefing or whatever, for the public to be there.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli and then Ms. Vaughn.
No, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, we have to have the technology that's acceptable and has to be live.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, first of all, the technology, I remember attending, before I was ever on the school board, attending meetings in the training room, and it was very, very difficult the way it was set up, and with the audience, some of the audience was facing the backs of people's heads, and also just take a look here, count the number of people, and definitely we've had a lot more for workshops, and if we did briefings, which I think would be very difficult to get the briefings in there. I think it's a space consideration. Unless there's something going on in this room or a problem with technology or an update, I think we need to stay in this room for our workshops and definitely for our briefings.
Okay, Mrs. Gittens.
Will we, if we did make that move, would we not have to limit the number of people?
Well, it would depend upon the room. I would assume the Caloosahatchee room has more space than this room, I believe. So it would depend upon where we were looking to move. So it sounds like we need information from staff, particularly around the technology. I know at one time we did not have the capability of live streaming from any other room. I don't know that that has changed, so we'd have to get that information. So what I'm hearing is we need to get information and then bring this back. Is that correct?
Okay, and I do know even the Caloosahatchee, the sound system is not very good and conducive to everyone hearing what everyone is saying, so.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
Would you then please just get us some information? And I
Yes,
know
ma'am.
the reason that it was asked, so that way it was more informal and we were all together speaking to one another face to face versus trying to, my back's to this one, my back's to that one. I think that was the purpose of that.
Yes, so we'll bring the information back on that. Ms. Giovanelli?
And we have to consider social distancing, so I think that still is key right now, so.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll bring more information on that one. The next one is an update on land and expansion of the tech schools. Ms. Morgan, I believe that was you. Just a thumbs up. I'm seeing already thumbs going up on that, so I know that we will be bringing information as that becomes available. I know we have plans to regularly update the board, so I don't think that that's a surprise to anyone there. So we'll go ahead and put a yes there. The PSA, which would maybe go right along with that, looking at the Public Service Academy future plans, and is that budgeted? So that would be included in that same update. Would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Ms. Morgan, the Innovation School?
Oh, I don't see it on here, did I?
I don't see it either.
No, it's on the, it was added
On
on to
hers.
the bottom.
Oh, I know how that happened. When Jen asked me which ones need to be posted, I had not looked at the video, and I was looking back to see exactly who had asked for what, and I realized that we hadn't added that, and it was on the video from the last meeting.
And now that I think about it, yes, it was in the context of what the Innovation School calls for from a budgetary point of view. It far exceeds what we provide for in a typical school footprint. So we needed to discuss the overage, and and we started to have that conversation this morning about the partnership. So I think we need to know more about how we want to proceed with respect to that plan and the funding.
Okay, do I see agreement on that?
Can I
Sure, Ms.
add
Vaughn.
something? Would it be appropriate to have a representative from FGCU or several representatives, kind of an update on what they expect? Because we have had the passing of Dr., what was her name, Hune? Yeah, we
They have been here.
We've had her passing. I know she was a huge, passionate advocate, and I don't know, have we had?
Yes.
We
They've been
haven't
here
had a detailed update. We've met.
since she's passed. We have had, they actually sat right here. Do you remember the Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah. But were we discussing the
Innovation School.
Yes, the Innovation School, yes.
That was about a month ago. Last week, there was a meeting with the interim dean of the College of Education, and the assistant dean or associate dean, and also the person that works with government and community relations for the university. And Dr. Savage, would you like to give a quick update on that?
Sure, absolutely. So essentially, we had a meeting just to have the initial conversations precisely of what you were just discussing here about the difference in the estimated budget amount versus any potential overages. It was really a coordination of any legislative asks and just an overarching legislative strategy, if such a strategy were to be considered. What would be kind of an appropriate timeline of consideration, just so that we're all on the same page. I think it's going to be an evolving body of work, and I think it's a fair ask for us to have a routine, regular engagement with the board so you can feel very confident that your wishes are being considered in those meetings. And I think they would very much appreciate the opportunity to engage with us in that capacity as well, just so that everyone is heard and all priorities are being considered.
Yes, and they were very clear that they would be happy to attend any of the board meetings and to please invite them. So do we have consensus that we'd like an update on the Innovation School?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Thank you. All right, and then Ms. Patrica, that brings us to your request about utilizing the presentations from FSBA.
Yes, I would like consensus to gather more information from the consultant regarding costs and specifics of services provided. What differentiates this consultant from other board building activities is that this consultant watches board meetings and then has individual sessions with board members to help them understand how they can improve their leadership skills at the table, bringing the board together,
And I don't know if we would direct or ask the chair to gather more information. I would be happy to reach out and gather more information. It seemed very hopeful when I sat in on that particular session. That's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments? Ms. Morgan?
Now, I already gave the information to the superintendent about that group, so I don't know if I copied Attorney Dupuy-Bruno or not, but superintendent has the information about that group, so all we have to do really is make a determination about who's going to.
Well, if they can reach out to, I think all of us had the opportunity to speak to them or watch the class or attend the class, except for Ms. Gittens. She did not attend. And Ms. Fisher, you were not there.
No, I wasn't there.
It was at the FSBA. It was the class where the gentleman said they go in and they watch.
Mississippi.
Oh, that guy.
They go in and they,
Okay.
yes.
I'm,
They help build.
yeah, I remember.
So, yes, so if.
Obviously, I was
If the superintendent, if you
overwhelmed
have
with
that information,
joy.
if that was already sent to you, perhaps Ms. Matthews, Ms. Holly can get that information as far as cost, because that's what they're looking, we need to know what in fact that would cost and what they do.
May I ask, go
If
ahead.
I may
Leah.
just ask a point of clarification. So I just wanted to ensure this is a board's interest in pursuing further as an entirety of a board. This would be something that you would like us to take steps forward as an entire board?
Let's get information.
Well, we'd have to is the
Just sharing
board?
the information,
Yeah,
I'm
is the
sorry.
board, well, I know Ms. Gittens has a question.
Well, my thing is that since Ms. Fisher and I were not privy to what you're talking about, I know personally I can't make a decision on this. So I would like to be copied on, the information to
Right.
look it over before we move to the next step.
So I believe the request is simply to gather more information in terms of cost going forward. And Ms. Morgan, if you would, or actually the superintendent has it, so maybe the superintendent could send that information to the rest of the board so everyone has the same information. And then the request was if Ms. Matthews could move forward in gathering some information about possible cost. So if we have consensus on that, to direct the superintendent to ask for that additional information. Can I see thumbs up? Ms. Patrica?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last thing I'd like to add on that is there have been several of my colleagues today who've raised the issue of there's so much on our plate. This can be scheduled because it's one-on-one sessions with this individual. It can be scheduled according to each board member's convenience, which I think removes the concern about having so much on our plate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and that leaves, we need to go back up to Ms. Vaughn's request around the school district obligations regarding transgender students and Title IX. Ms. Vaughn, would you like to expand upon that?
It seems like almost ancient history. Perhaps on this, just a presentation. I believe that when I brought it up, I was asking for a presentation, maybe for some outside people that that deal with this, because we do have to. We do have federal laws, some fairly new laws from the Biden administration, and I just think maybe a clarification on what we by law need to do, and then maybe again revisiting what we are doing or what maybe needs to be improved.
Thank you. Could I get clarification on, did you want the information from an external source or from our internal legal department?
I would like to see it from external.
Okay, and then internally what we're currently doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comment or questions around that? Ms. Morgan?
Why external?
I just think sometimes you need to have different, well, not different points of view, but different ways of approaching things. And I think if we have somebody who
even when I say external, I'm not sure who that would be, honestly. But that's mainly it, that it would be somebody who is completely objective and not dealing with any of, this is a high emotion topic, and I would like to see what our obligations are dealt with in just a very straightforward way, and just kind of a review of what we are doing, if we are meeting the new federal guidelines.
Okay, thank you. I have Ms. Morgan and I'm sorry, Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Giovanelli, but before that, I would like to ask Attorney Dupree-Bruno, do you have any suggestions as to who the board might turn to for that external viewpoint?
So I just want some clarification from Ms. Vaughn. Are you asking what is the status of the law, and you would like someone to come in and explain what the status of the law is? Because the law hasn't changed. It's the same law. Nothing has changed, even with the executive order from President Biden. The law itself has not changed. The Supreme Court declined to review the Grimm case. So actually, at this point, there is, and the 11th Circuit has also, District Court of Appeals with regards to the Adams case, the St. John's Adams case, has not changed. So at this point, the law is still the exact same law where we were 6 months ago.
Okay, so then maybe that's not something that we need, but I certainly wouldn't mind having at least a paper on the various laws that we are governed by.
And I will add that I know that staff is working on the new flyer and guidelines that is going to be very inclusive. So perhaps when that comes before the board, an update as to where we are in terms of the law itself and as in terms of this new guidebook, I should say, as well as the flyer, may be appropriate at that time.
And you know what? This actually could be expanded, not just transgender students, but employees and employees' rights. And it's not something that is a priority that has to happen soon, but I certainly would like to see, because I know, again, this is a very emotional issue with the various communities that we have here in Lee County, and I actually, maybe for the benefit of not just us, but for the general community, so that they realize, well, what are the laws that govern this, and include not just the students, but include our hiring practices.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Yes, so I was actually going to mention what Attorney Dupree-Bruno mentioned, that staff is working on that revision of the Statement of Non-Discrimination Policy, which is inclusive, which does address employees as well as students, and which lists the laws that do apply. And then we had that presentation, I think, by Mr. Williams and some of the legal department. I think we have that somewhere in our board docs history. It was actually a PowerPoint. So I think we have a lot of that information, but I do agree with you that it's probably good for us to make a statement, even though it's an issue that comes up every day in the newspaper, on TV. I mean, it's part of our lives and our society. And so, yes, I think that our responsibilities are being taken seriously, and that we have fail-safes in place to help with people who have issues. And I understand that not everybody is on board, and I think that's the problem. It's like when we talk about telling the story and giving information to certain groups of people and having it get all the way down the pike so that everyone is aware. That's the part I think that we need some help with.
May I?
But thank you for...
Yes, please. That presentation by Mr. Williams, and I think it was Mr. Holloway,
it was very dull and dry, I'm going to be honest. They did excellent job in pulling out every statute and legal case.
Right.
It was way over the top for what we needed and for what the community needed. So
Well, no, I understand.
I'm not going back
No,
to
I
that.
just wanted to
that.
illustrate
No, I
that
remember that,
information is there.
but
and
I
it's
don't
clear.
think it was a particularly engaging presentation.
Right.
And not what we as a board nor the community needs, because we don't need to go back to cases from 1886 or whenever.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
So I'm going to add a little to that. So it's the same thing for me, I think, as the critical race theory, but on a different aspect. Because the law requires us as a district to do certain things and obligations, and we're not clear in exactly, there's no question in it. The law's not, and so people don't understand that we have to abide by the law. And that's all we can do as a district. We are limited to that, actually. So I think the statement needs to be made just like the critical race theory statement. So if someone goes on our website and keys in critical race theory, they get our statement. Keys in, the laws governing Title IX and what is required of a school district, and they get that information. So, and because we're going to abide by the law, because that's what we've sworn to do, right? So I think just the understanding of that needs to be expressed and educated out to the community, and that has not happened. And it's the same kind of topic, and we have to protect all students, right? So I think it's just getting the information out there and the understanding of it. And so ever how we're an education system, ever how we can educate our community better, I'm all for that. So let's do it. So what that looks like is I'm going to go back to the experts.
So might I suggest that we put this aside until we have the materials that have been developed by staff, and when those are brought forward, then you can take a look at those and decide if you need additional information, and then we can also hear the plan for how those will be communicated out. If we could get consensus around that, please. I know we lost Ms. Morgan. I believe we lost Ms. Patrica as well. They both had 4 o'clock stops, but with the rest of them, we have a yes. Okay, thank you. The last item actually isn't on there, but it did go out in your board update that we had a request from EDAC. They would like to have a student EDAC group formed and wanted to bring that forward to the board for discussion. So I'll open that up for discussion. Ms. Jordan?
I believe that we can put both those together with the student advisory or student, whatever we're calling our kids, leadership as one. Because I think for us to start having 2 sets, it's like they will feel like they're losing a part of what they are supposed to be doing, advocating for their schools. And I just think that, we've designed that for them. We need to keep them doing it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Giovanelli.
So our student advisory group, which is now going to be, I think, the student leadership group, they have had members attend some of our board advisory groups to represent the student voice. And I think that would be a much more efficient and simpler way to involve the students and get their voices. And at any point in time, they can come to one of the student meetings because they're very happy to share their information, their opinions, and their suggestions for improvements. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli, and then Mrs. Gittens.
Okay, so I agree with both of you. However, I'm going to take a different stand because I believe that we need all voices heard, and I do not think that the student advisory is that exactly. And the reason why I'm going to say this is how many LGBT students are on that student advisory? How many?
Quite a few.
Okay, I haven't been to the only one-to-one meeting, so I mean that's really important. I just want to make sure. So then, how many transgenders are on that board?
Yeah.
1.
And they make known immediately when they get there
let you know
what their pronouns are.
Okay.
And we have a very diverse representation.
Okay,
on our
and that's
student
not been the norm in the past, so,
It is in this one.
okay, and that's good to know, because it's not been that way in the completely past. And I think it's just all about awareness, right? And them having a voice. And so I just want to make sure that that opportunity is there. So that's the reason why I would have slightly disagreed, but I'm going to come back and agree with you. Because, I mean, I just want to make sure that their voices are heard. And that's so important, that's all.
And what Ms. Fisher did say, the students have, and I know that Ms. Vaughn and Ms. Gittens have been there as well to the meetings, they do invite their fellow classmates there. If they have any kind of concerns or any kind of issues, the kids will come there and they will share with, and then they try as collectively to try to solve their problems there as students.
Okay.
It's pretty neat.
So then how does EDAC not know? How do we educate EDAC? Because that's where this came from. So, and I'm going to bring it back around to the question.
And we can, I can share that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gittens, and then Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, Ms. Vaughn.
Okay. My thing is, I'm not sold on another committee, a different committee. What I would think is, from the existing student committee, that we have different groups. In other words, you're working on this within and that within, because you do tend to have a large group and the leaders are doing, and the movers and shakers, but the others are just attendees. Having these subcommittees would allow more people to participate and to do something within the committee. I'm not for starting something all over again, because to me, it divides rather than keeping everyone, let's all talk together about it. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, I was going to say, as the liaison to EDAC, we always run really long. And when I say long, we've had 2-hour meetings, and there's a lot of great things that come out of EDAC. And I'm putting my memory back to a month or so ago, and I know it was brought up, and we were coming up with recommendations that they want it to be brought. And honestly, I don't believe that it was vetted and, a long discussion. That said, I think it's an important idea that we have the subgroups. And that's actually something that I, at one point a few months ago, emailed after I attended one of the student groups, that it seemed like there would be an interest to have subgroups, maybe have some that are racial and, diversity, and others that might be the LGBTQ community, and others on safety or whatever. But it is the student advisory or student leadership group. They are self-driven, and so that's another issue that we have to understand. And quite frankly, I didn't have a chance at that particular EDAC meeting to really run some of the issues by EDAC. But I think it's a great idea, but it's one that really has to be hammered out, and it might be something that the student group wants to explore, and maybe we'll go back and re-explore in EDAC and come up with some other ways.
Just one quick thing, we might want to suggest to them that that we have a liaison to each of the adult advisory committees, so they can bring that back to their
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so we could maybe do that, Ms. Fisher.
All right, so I have some information from Ms. McClung regarding the student leadership group. However, since Ms. Patrica and Ms. Morgan are not here, I will bring it up tomorrow at tomorrow's meeting for good of the order.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So as far as the EDAC request, my understanding, we'll take a consensus, that you will not form a student EDAC group, but rather will work to develop some subcommittees within the student group that is already established. I see consensus on that.
Bring it back for discussion.
Yes. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. Mrs. Giddens.
I know it's not on there because it came up this morning, but I just wanted to mention this with the individuals that were here, Ms. Owen and the ESC group this morning. I really would like to see us do not a workshop, but a briefing, which would allow other community members to be able to speak as well. But I would like to see us do a briefing on ESC, not just with staff, but to have like Ms. Owen and some of the individuals from her group that were here today, just to talk about, it's very interesting hearing the things that they do and how just small things would make a difference with those students. So I would like to put that out there if anyone would be interested in doing a briefing on the ESC situation.
And then, Ms. McClung, if you can please, I may be mistaken, but I think I see Ms. Bowen's back there too, that don't they have a monthly meeting or a bi-monthly meeting with ESE, like the parents and?
I'll defer to Ms. Bowen.
That's still taking place, correct? I know it used to take place. I just want to make sure that it is still going on.
Yes, we do hold a meeting once a quarter.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm confused. Were you saying that to not do?
I'm saying that they already do this where the parents come in, and I just noticed from my own.
But that's not what I was asking. I mean, because I'm sure we can all attend those. I'm asking for us to have an update and a briefing to hear more on what they were bringing up today.
Yeah, but you're asking for staff, or you're asking for the public to come in and do a briefing?
What I said was to have staff and some of the parents that were here today to be on that panel so that we can,
So I'm hearing a request to have a briefing that would include both staff and community members. And do you have a specific way of choosing those community members that you would like to invite?
Well, no, I'm just thinking using the group that was here today, ask Ms. Owen and ask, staff to provide some people, and we, have the conversation, so.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Ms. Vaughn?
Now, the thing that I was particularly interested in was, I think I wrote these letters down, BCBA, the Specialized Behavioral, are those the right letters? And she said that Collier County uses that, has trained individuals, but we don't.
That was not totally correct.
Okay.
However, we do have people on staff with those credentials. They do work in other capacities, like one of our coordinators is a board-certified behavior analyst, as well as you guys are familiar with our executive director, Jessica Duncan, is a board-certified behavior analyst, among other people that work in different capacities. In Collier County, they do have a specific job title, which we have been working on with both the union, and we think we're at that point right now. We're waiting for the budget process to go through, but we will begin working on a specific job description and job title that will be that specific person. We also have an MOU with Family Initiative where we have been working, they have been working with our schools in bringing in a board-certified behavior analyst to work with our students with autism.
Okay, and so I would like to have more information on that. And since you said we're working on it, and it's even in discussions with the union, it's going to be something that we need more information on, maybe even prior to a discussion. So it's board-certified behavioral analyst is the A.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we have certified but not a designated person that just does that.
That's their whole job. So when we need a board-certified behavior analyst, like in our department, we generally utilize Mr. Kozlowski. So he performs those duties and was involved with the person who spoke.
Okay, so I for one, would be very interested in hearing something from ESE department and that particular function and how that would really help with, she was talking about autistic developmentally delayed, right?
It's utilized for many students, but one of the particular disabilities that it comes up with often is autism spectrum disorder.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Okay, so could we have consensus around a briefing around ESE to include some parents, particularly Ms. Owen, who spoke this morning?
I'm not, yeah, because of the fact of what parents would that be? What does that look like? And picking and choosing. I would not. Maybe something where ESE department could come and share with everybody what a 504 is, what an IEP is, what is the process of going through this, and what do they do for the kids, so people have an understanding of what that all is, which I believe most of us already know what that is, but for those who do not understand the process, maybe that would be something. But to have a panel of one parent, one person coming in, I don't know where we're going to go find the other ones. How do we find them?
If there's no appetite, I'll take it off the table. And I will just.
So then let me reword it and instead say, is there consensus that you would like a briefing from the ESE department on some of the specific programs and how those are being addressed? And Ms. Fisher, did you have a question first or a comment?
Yeah, I would like to hear from Ms. Bowen about that because there's so many different exceptionalities. And they do have that ESE parent support group. So maybe someone representing that as well as staff. And then maybe they could help us identify a couple different parents because I don't know that, this group that was here today is focused on one thing, and that is the behavior intervention programs. So, and there's so much more to ESE than that. I mean, it's really more global. So I would defer to Ms. Bowen and see what her recommendations might be.
Would you be comfortable in providing some recommendations around parents to participate in a panel?
Can I?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my point was not to just take a tunnel view and talk to one group of parents, which is why I said staff and parents that could be involved, because you do get a different perspective from someone who has gone through it. But I'm not going to belabor it because of the hour, so it's up to them.
So the latest version is that we would get a briefing from ESE, and Ms. Bowen would recommend she would bring some parents that were representative of some different groups in order to have a panel discussion. We have consensus around that.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I believe that we have, Ms. Vaughn?
Question.
Ma'am.
When is our discussion for auditor scheduled?
It was taken off the agenda, wasn't it?
I believe we need, we are required by law, and we have things right now in this district that we could use the help of our auditors, and yet we have none.
So with regards to the auditor, I would suggest that the board set up a workshop probably to start the preliminary discussions with regards to the audit committee policy and the audit selection policy, those will be coming before you at the first meeting in August.
I'm sorry, at when?
August, the first opportunity in August, it will be coming before the board.
But we're going to be moving forward on that, I hope.
Well, you all wanted the audit committee and you wanted all of that, the policy and the audit committee, prior to getting an auditor. That was the direction of the board. That's what we're waiting on. So because we were off this whole month, everything has kind of been, again, pushed back. And I know that they have worked on the policy and for the audit committee as well. So that's going to be coming to us at the next meeting. And then once we have that, then we will proceed with an auditor as per the board's recommendation.
Okay, yeah, and regardless of what is pushing this off, kicking the can, we need to move post haste. And the other thing that I would like to, I'm very unhappy about what happened with RSM because I thought they were a really good firm, and I thought, and I believe that it was the bullying and harassment of one or two, I'm saying one particular board member that drove them away. And maybe some of you are cringing at what I'm saying, but it doesn't matter because it's the truth. We have a new administration, or we're having a reorganization, and I would like also for us to revisit with RSM, revisit what happened and put something in place that would guarantee that what the horribly disrespectful display will never be repeated, because I thought they were a really good firm, and I was shocked and saddened when they quit on us because of the behavior of minority, not the whole board.
Okay, so if I may, because it is now 4:22, we were supposed to be over at 4 o'clock, and I apologize to all of you that are sitting out there, I really do. I know that you've been here since, well, some of you have probably been here since 6 o'clock this morning.
All day.
Getting ready, so I do apologize for that. And we still have the agenda review to go through. If we could get through the audit committee and the audit, get that on our next meeting, schedule that, which it's on, we vote on that, and we move forward to RSM or whomever else to get this straightened out.
So the board knows that this policy is going to go directly into a first briefing. So it's starting the rulemaking process when you see it. So if there's any other corrections or comments or concerns, please let me know now, because when it comes before you, it's set on the rulemaking process, that 28-day process, so I can get that done. And there's 3 other policies that will be joining it.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
I just want to reiterate that I did bring this to the board previously, saying that we needed to look again at RSM. And I don't know if anyone did anything else about it, but I have brought it up on the board before. And I think there was some question about the chair or somebody contacting or whatever. But I just wanted on record that I have brought this up previously, shortly after we lost them.
Yes, yes, you have, Ms. Gittens, and I appreciate the fact that you reminded, and I have it written down right here, and that also, when we spoke about it, everyone said to wait to revisit until we get all this other stuff done. And again, it is the pleasure of the board, the entire board, who make these decisions. So once we get that finished, we need to get that one, we have to get that done. The committee, because that's what you all want, so that they can help us, and they can actually, once we have them, they can be the people who reach out to RSM and speak to them, because they're the audit committee, and that way, because all of you want that.
Well, but I honestly, if I can just say this, I have to.
Please.
It's still kicking it down the road, kicking the can down the road, because we needed to already have reached out to RSM to find out, was there anything we possibly could do, because they would have helped us along with this process. That's all I have to say about it. I think that waiting until we get the committee and everyone selecting who's going to be on this and the committee meeting and way too long. We need to reach out to them, that if they are willing to help us do all of this, but that's my opinion.
Thank you. Ms. McClung, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we are going to move forward with the agenda review and Dr. Savage. And again, thank you all that are sitting out there. I really appreciate you.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have a few good cause items that have also been added, and what we've asked is for all those good cause items, for those late additions, for the folks to be here to speak to those as well, so that there's an understanding of the significance of why those items were added at this late hour. So if with your permission, I'm just going to go in order of the items that you have presented as they appear on the agenda.
Thank you.
We'll start with F section, consent board office. Approval of board member travel to the FSBA FAD's annual summer conference. Questions: why are we just now approving after the fact? We usually approve prior, and wasn't this approved before travel? I guess that's you, Chair Jordan.
That is correct. And what had happened there is that we had, unfortunately, we had one person down in the office, so we had only one person in there. And at that particular time, in the trying to get all the paperwork together and trying to get everything together for the search committee and trying to get a superintendent in, this was thought to have been taken care of, which we found out it was not after the fact. I know that after the meeting, we did have conversations about what transpired at that meeting. So that is why. Normally, you're correct, Ms. Giovanelli, it definitely, and Ms. Gittens, comes before us prior, but that is exactly what took place. We had one person down in the office and a new person who had really never, was not really familiar with all this. She thought that it was human error. It's simple as it can be.
Thank you.
Yep. But we will definitely be paying more attention, making sure that it doesn't happen again.
Madam Chair, I think that Board Member Patrica is on the phone again.
Oh, Ms. Patrica, are you here?
Yes, ma'am, I have rejoined the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're currently on the agenda review, okay? Go ahead, Dr. Savage.
Section H, consent items, academic services. Item H6, approval of the grant proposal for Title I, Part D, Subpart 2, neglected, delinquent, and at-risk. The question was, will this include payment for tutoring? And we have a response from Ms. Kennedy here.
And if, actually, I can hold off on this and I can speak with Ms. Kennedy about it for the sake of time.
Thank you very much, Ms.
If you would give permission for her to contact me later. Thank you.
The next item is H7, approval of the jobs for Florida's graduates, memorandum of understanding, fiscal year 21-22. The question was, please explain this program. Again, we have a response from Ms. Kennedy.
See, I tried to help you out, but.
Yeah, I don't think it's on.
Can you hear me now? There we go. Jobs for Florida Graduates is a school-to-career program that helps students graduate, build confidence, and successfully move on to gainful employment and/or post-secondary education. It's actually a grant that we had last year, and we had one person in that position. This year, we were able to add 2 more. So what you have on your agenda is the MOU that outlines the requirements for both the school district and the organization.
And that was Ms. Stevens?
Yep, I just wanted people to hear about we're doing good things.
That is definitely a great, this is
Right.
really great. And my only concern is I know it's a minimum of 50 students, so, or for each class, so that's definitely
There are definitely some requirements and laid out by different grade levels, but Mr. Matthews has embraced it, and he's very excited and getting the students in there. So it's been a great, as I said, he had 1 last year. This year he has 3. And he does have to contribute some funds towards that, but it's been a great program.
It's a great program. Thank you. I just wanted people to know about it. That's all. Thank you.
Dr. Savage?
Yes, Madam Chair, H10, approval to renew agreement with the Center for Progress and Excellence Incorporated for their use of the Circuit 20 Mobile Crisis Response Team. The question was, please explain this program. We have a response from Ms. Lori Brooks.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this question. The Center for Progress and Excellence is the lead agency for the Circuit 20 Mobile Crisis Response Team, and this team serves all of Circuit 20. They have multiple teams out and about to serve the needs in the community, and part of that contract is also that they serve the needs of school-age youth that have suicidal ideation. So schools are statutorily required to call the Mobile Crisis Response Team if a student presents with suicidal ideation and the school mental health professional, after delivering the Columbia Suicide Risk Assessment, has a level of risk that is indicative of the Mobile Crisis Team needing to be called. The Mobile Crisis Team engages in further de-escalation, and they do a further clinical assessment called the SAFE-T. So the Columbia and the SAFE-T are on the Florida Department of Education preferred list of suicide risk assessments, which is why our schools conduct the first one, and we allow Mobile Crisis to do the more clinical, deeper end assessment from their clinical team. And then they engage in that de-escalation and that assessment, and steps are taken to determine next steps. They do run an almost 90% de-escalation rate, and they connect the student to services and the family at that point. If they're unsuccessful in de-escalation, then they do have to go down that path of an involuntary hospitalization. At the same time the school calls the Mobile Crisis Team, they also call the parent and guardian, because they are a critical part of this process, and we want them on site at the school to be with their child and with the Mobile Crisis Response Team throughout that assessment.
Thank you.
Ms. Brooks, if you don't mind hanging out for the next question as well. H11,
Sure.
Approval to renew the agreement with the Center for Progress and Excellence. I'm sorry. That's right. The use of the Circuit 20 Mobile Crisis Response. The question was, where is the parent notification mentioned? What are the qualifications for team members? How are school contacts assigned and trained? And what is the role of the SRO and school counselor?
Again, excellent questions. And the parent notification is not mentioned in the contract for the Mobile Crisis Response Team, because in statute that responsibility lies with the school, which is why after the school mental health professional conducts the Columbia risk assessment, they also loop in their administration and then call the parent to come to the school, parent or guardian to come to the school, while they also engage the Mobile Crisis Team in deploying to the school. The qualifications for team members: for the Mobile Crisis Team, the team members must consist of a licensed mental health practitioner, a master's level mental health practitioner, and also a peer specialist. And those are the team members that report to the school. So as far as the school contacts, those are the school mental health professionals. And so our school mental health professionals are trained annually by our department. And also school leaders are trained on the suicidal ideation process, because we want to make sure that they're aware of what is going on their campus and can help as part of the interdisciplinary team that rolls through the protocols we have in place. And then the role of the SRO and the school counselor. Well, the role of the school counselor is to conduct the Columbia and then inform administration and also call the team as needed. And really, per state statute, our school resource officers are what we would call the kind of the last line of defense. They are to deploy in a situation if the student is placing themselves in imminent danger or placing others in imminent danger. In other words, they need to secure the child immediately. And then also in Senate Bill 590, The school resource officer will only be called in after the district has made an attempt to engage a licensed mental health professional, in this case, the mobile crisis team, and we're currently working on other layers of the licensed mental health professional interceding before we ask an SRO to step in.
Just to clarify, I want to just for the record make sure, I believe that was H11 was actually the approval to renew the agreement with Salus Care for the expedited coordination of mental health referrals related to safety concerns in the attached memorandum. Is that correct?
That would be, yes, that would be correct. Okay. And I apologize, I had the wrong title on there.
No, it's not your fault. I just want to make sure for the record that there's an understanding linking the correct item and so forth.
Yes.
But that was the correct item.
Okay.
I mean, it was
Page 11.
And I just want to qualify that I was at a behavioral health meeting, a community behavioral health meeting, and those questions came up because there were some reports that it was not felt that the respondents with CPE were actually master's levels, and that at one point they were just interns. So I think there was some concern about that. So I just...
Yes, and we meet every other Friday with the CEO and clinical director of the mobile crisis team to discuss opportunities, and also on our end too, when they report to our schools, just any kind of sticky wickets we've both encountered on either end. There was a time for a period of a few short weeks where there was a mental health program intern reporting to our schools, and we quickly rectified that we will not have a mental health intern reporting to our schools when our master's level school mental health professionals have to already have earned their master's, and they did correct that.
Thank you.
Dr. Savage, I had a question regarding H6, and I totally missed that. And it's regards to the transitional specialist and the specialist coach. Are those new? And I know it was Ms. Kennedy. It's renewed. We had that last year, but we had people in that position last year. Are these new people that are in these positions this year?
I'm sorry, which grant was that?
DJJ?
Was that the DJJ, that was they have a different position this year. So they have one position. We continue to have a coaching position.
So what exactly, so the transitional specialist has always been there. They were part at the jail and then part down here, correct? And they were making sure that the kids were doing what they needed to do and following up with them as far as placement. And then the specialist coach, what is that position now? So is it two different positions? And I thought I emailed it to you, but I seen that it wasn't emailed.
Transition specialist, which DJJ had in the past, due to the fact of a residential program. As of now, Lee County does not have a residential program, which was PACE at the time. This year, also, we did not have enough units for transition. The state has eliminated transition requirements for DJJ. So, in actuality, we only had a 0.5 as a transition. In actuality, we could handle transition in-house. We have a coaching we have a coach this year, and we also had the same position last year, which Ms. Schillinger had last year, and now this year, Mr. Williams is in that position. So that position was there. The transition position has gone from DJJ due to state requirements.
So Mr. Williams is now a coach, a specialist coach?
Yes, and he works with the teachers as far as getting them prepared for any academics, just as the same as Ms. Andrea Schillinger did last year. So that position was there.
But then the other one, was it not a part-time position, the transitional specialist?
It was a 0.5. It was a 0.5 transition specialist. What had happened was last year, there was money placed over to carry on that transition person because there was nowhere to actually put that particular employee. So we kept that person on last year, but this year, like I said, we do not have a residential program. we do not have enough staff to generate another 0.5 to keep a transition specialist, and we don't have the work for that transition specialist person due to what we have coming from the state.
But we have them on here as a person on this grant. We're still asking for this just in case we find a person.
Is a 0.5. It's not a full position. It can be a part-time position. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there are any other questions with that one, I can resume back to H13.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
H13, approval of the agreement for professional service with Impact for Developmental Education. The question was $10,000. Website is suspended. What services are provided for? How many children? Ms. Bowen?
Yes, I have called them and put in an inquiry as to what's going on with their website. I still don't have an answer back. This contract is for our pre-K students who qualify for like therapies but not really need to come into a full-time classroom that we would have in the school district. We are required to serve students in what is called the least restrictive environment. So sometimes a student might just have like a slight speech disorder at age 3 or 4, and we would send a therapist to their daycare or wherever they might be so that we're still being able to serve students in a more general education environment, if you want to kind of put it that way, whereas we don't have that available in our school district. So last year we served 4 students in this capacity. We only used approximately $4,000 of the $10,000. It does depend on what students are kind of walking through that child find fiddler's door that need to be evaluated because at age 3 we're required to serve.
Thank you.
Item H16, approval of the Memorandum of Understanding with Give Back Careers. Questions, Give Back National Public Charity Partnership, College and Career Pathways Mentoring, financial details, no partners in Florida. How did we connect with this program? We couldn't find it online. Name of the principal. Where do they get their mentors? Ms. Brooks?
Okay, thank you very much. The Give Back program was actually a program that Kelly Thawley in Career and Technical Education had been exposed to in all of her partnerships in the community related to post-secondary planning and connection for students. It's a nonprofit organization that was started by a gentleman named Robert Carr that received a scholarship from a local organization, and it really helped him. It was only $250, but he promised himself that he would give back to other students. And so as he became successful and in his businesses, he started this nonprofit organization. It focuses exclusively on students with an estimated financial contribution of $0 and prioritizes students who have experienced foster care, homelessness, or the incarceration of a parent. So it really meets first generation, typically first gen college students in their place of need, provides them with a mentor, and helps them to do career exploration and then connect all the way through whatever post-secondary training, whether it's going to be a college or technical school or an apprenticeship program. It connects them to the required training they need to reach their career pathway. Let's see. We start these students as early as 8th and 9th grade for mentoring, but we can identify them up through 11th grade. And then also, the Give Back program is expanding into Florida at this time. We are not their first district, and I tried to reach out to our representative just to ask for the other districts that have already engaged, but they are newer in Florida. For mentors, they sign on local organizations that already have mentoring programs. They're very open to doing that, but they also have their own mentors that they can connect us with locally, and they follow our background check requirements, and then also they do pretty intensive mentorship training for the mentors in their program. I think I answered everything.
Ms. Fisher, is that?
That was both me and Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, Ms. Morgan.
So I think the questions have been answered, but I don't know, pardon me, if any of those facts have been checked out and if the mentors are identified?
So in working with the agency, they've got mentors through their agency standing ready, but they're also actively recruiting. And I did not see, and that's why I reached out to them as well, do they have any local organizations nearby, like Big Brothers Big Sisters or any other mentoring organizations already with formalized partnerships? So I know they're working on it, but I wanted to touch back with them to ask if they had engaged yet, and I do not have that information right now, but I can get that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Savage?
Yes, Madam Chair. H19, approval of the SIG School Improvement Grant 1003G Cohort 4, fiscal year 21-22 final year grant. The question is, don't understand staffing summary. We have the response from Ms. Kennedy.
So the SIG-4 grant is a grant that was for 5 years. This is the 5th year, and with that, there's a reduction in funding each year. So when you look at, it is kind of confusing when you look at the actual staffing, but the staffing that is listed, those that were removed were positions that were no longer funded from the grant, and the positions that show as continuing, those are the positions, those are the only positions that will continue.
H22, approval of the Computer Science Teacher Bonuses Grant. Is this for certifications, i.e. Microsoft? Ms. Kennedy?
So there are 2 computer science grants. This particular grant actually pays a stipend for teachers that have the computer science certification and are teaching one of the qualified coding computer science type classes that is provided. They provide the course codes to us on which ones will receive a stipend. The other grant we have for computer science actually does provide certification, teacher certification. So there's 2 different grants.
Oh, okay. No, I remember going through those Microsoft things.
It's not actually Microsoft, it's the teacher certification though, so the teacher can teach one of the classes that provide that stipend. So that grant actually provides the professional development so that we can provide the training and get more teachers that will teach the coding classes, and then it provides actual funding where we can pay for the class or for the teacher to take the test and add it to their certificate. So, and as well as give them a stipend for doing the work to get there.
And do we still have are we still working with the Microsoft certifications, and are they still doing that in the high schools?
That I don't know. That I would refer to someone else.
Well, that will be in my conversation with you later.
Did that answer? You're good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. H27, approval of grant proposal for Title III, Part A, supplementary instruction for English language learners, 21-22. Dr. Evelyn Rivera.
I think the question is if we're adding 5 positions to the grant, and the answer is yes. We're adding 2 ESOL specialists due to the growing number of ELLs. This year, the numbers show that we have 2,287 new ELLs in our district. So we will have 2,287 new English language learners. So that will require more support for the teachers. So the 2 ESOL specialists that we're adding to the grant will support the teachers through modeling lessons, coaching, mentoring, and also PD on WIDA standards, and also PSYOP and all other sound strategies for ESOL. The 3 ESOL paraprofessionals will be assigned to schools with greater needs, and they will work with the teachers side by side in implementing the lessons that the teachers have put together and make the lessons comprehensible. They will work in small groups and also with individual students as needed to provide a stronger support to our English language learners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. We also have 2 good cause items in that section, so if, with your permission, I'd like to have those now.
Please.
H48, good cause, approval of e-dynamic learning. Ms. Iving and Ms. Berry are here. Oh, thank you. Mr. Simmons?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
eDynamics is a program that LVS used before, and it was actually sold through FLVS. And FLVS and eDynamics had a falling out. A number of our students are already enrolled in eDynamics. They were using it for their elective courses in middle school and high school. So they offered it to sell it directly to the school districts. So that's what that purchase is for. And the reason why the price is $100,000 is to prepare in case we have a huge influx of students like we did last year. The course, the price is actually $43 per student for the lower level courses and $63 per student for the upper level elective courses. And it also covers college and career as well. There's 10 offerings in middle school. So they purchased that to give more options for our LVS students.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
Thank you.
H49 is good cause. Approval to renew the annual contract with the Pace Center for Girls Incorporated. Mr. Buchanan is here to speak to that.
Good afternoon again. We're bringing this agreement with PACE up because for a good cause item, because we want to have guidelines in place with PACE and also the district responsibility going into the start of the year. Also, I might want to add that we did come in a little late with this agreement due to the fact that PACE did have a transition with leadership. So that caused some of the transition with this agreement being put in on time. Also, I'd like to state one of the highlights on the House Bill 723 as follows: requires district school boards to satisfy invoices for providers within 15 days of a receipt. District school boards that fail to timely satisfy invoice must pay interest of a 1% per month and calculated daily fee, which would, without getting this in, this would cause the district extra finances. So we want to make sure that we get this in to avoid any extra fees for this agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. The next section is section L, for consent items for operations. Item L3, approval of phase 1 pre-construction budget estimate for the J Elementary School new construction and MM Middle School expansion. The question is only J and MM expansion, and the response is from Mr. Rickenbacker.
Good afternoon, board members. Scott Rickenbacker, Director of Construction. Fire away.
It was my question. And I just wanted to be clear that what we're voting on tomorrow night is in L3, basically just J and MM expansion. J, the elementary, and MM, the expansion. Am I correct?
In item L3, it specifically only speaks to J and MM in L3.
Okay. And then, well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, it's L4 is the next one, so.
Item L4, approval of the Department of Education spot survey, 5.6, remodel of DOE-approved schools K and NN, and the unification of Lehigh Acres Middle School with Veterans Park Academy for the Arts. I think Mr. Rickenbacker will be joined by Ms. Ebaugh, and the question was, need further information on Veterans Park Super School.
Okay, and can I clarify my question? Yes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Basically, my understanding is that this has to do with just the spot survey for Veterans Park Super School, or the upgrade and what will happen to the old Lambs building. My concern was that, let me start this part again, so that this spot survey is to allow the existing Veterans Park to be able to use some of that facility in the old Lambs building. Am I correct there?
Somewhat. This spot survey combines the two campuses. So this spot survey, all the spot survey does is allows the old Lambs campus and the current Veterans campus to become one campus, which then paves the way for the work that we're going to be doing on the campus in terms of developing a campus master plan. And in the campus master plan, we will be evaluating the campus programs, the academic programs. We'll be evaluating the number of student stations that we want on the campus. We will be identifying any facility improvements, including the new performing arts facility. All of that can't happen until we unify the two campuses into a single campus, which is what this spot survey does. It doesn't speak to any issues long-term. That's all to be addressed through the campus master plan, which we've selected our architect, our CM, and our building official. We're in contract negotiations. That effort will take us to about spring or summer of next year when we'll start construction.
Okay, and this is where I have difficulty with this. I have been told, even by the previous superintendent and others in planning, that it is not in stone yet what we're going to do. And to me, this is the first step in moving towards the super school. And that's, well, you know my concerns, and that's why I can't support that.
So this was, we held off on submitting this spot survey until we had our presentation that we did in April. Upon receiving the support of the board at that presentation, we continue to do the work of the spot survey and are now presenting it. Again, this is a foundation piece. This doesn't give any specifics as to what will happen on the campus, but we can't do anything with a unified campus until we take this step.
And that's my concern, is that it would be a unified campus. The suggestion, for example, when I spoke to the superintendent about the current superintendent, and I said, why can't we do similar to Harns Marsh Elementary and Harns Marsh Middle, Cypress, and a few other schools where we have one campus, but we have separate schools. They are all, one is a feeder into the other one, but they have their own administration, their own principal, and I know that the Black Box Theater, Performing Arts, could still be a joining factor for the two. But I really just can't support a mega school in that community when everything shows that having over 1,000, 1,200 kids with elementary and middle is just, I just don't think that it's optimal academically, for one, and for our demographic in that area. So I have mentioned it before, and that's what, I mean, combining the campus is fine as long as you have separate schools, and then you have the performing arts that kind of is shared by the two.
I'm happy to contribute, and please, Ms. Ebel, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert in this area, but to my understanding, there is nothing that precludes us from, through this master site design, this campus, looking at all of the considerations in these facilities. There's nothing that precludes us from absolutely adjusting course, converting into different types of configurations. Is that this first step is simply to memorialize the Old Lambs campus transitioning to the new building, and then the remaining site being absorbed onto that full campus so that we can go through that design process and ultimately realize whatever will be the new vision for that site. Is that correct?
Right. This is just a foundational piece. I think that at the presentation that we did in April, what we had heard was The consensus of the board is that we would do something around academies, which there would be 3 distinct academies on the campus. All of that and how that plays out, how the configuration of the campus works, how the administration of the campus works, all of that is part of the phase 1 master planning that we are looking to engage in over the next year, and will definitely include the community and the board in those discussions as we move forward. But none of that can happen until we submit this submit this spot survey and unify the 2 campuses into a single campus.
And I will say finally and finish it, that point of unifying the campus is where I'm concerned. I remember your presentation of having the academies and all. My concern is having one administration for that big of a group. It's way too big. And I mean, I could have my kids in one part of the campus and never see that principal or APs for whatever. And yes, there would be associate principals and all that, but I just don't think it's conducive. I think that we need to have it separate. There wasn't another option to that. When you guys presented, it was like, this is what we're going to do. And I know it will more than likely pass, but I will not be supporting it.
And we will take your concerns into consideration as we move forward.
Thank you.
And just to close that item out, I want to reiterate, this in no way binds our hands to any type of administrative configurations or anything along those lines. So this is almost, the analogy, a blank canvas that allows us to paint, and if we want to sever that canvas into multiple pieces, we could do so. This in no way ties our hands in that way. Is that correct, Ms. Ebal?
In fact, we will need to do another spot survey. We will need to do another spot survey or include it as part of our plant survey, depending on the timing of this, before we complete this project. So this spot survey is just a very early preliminary step that allows us foundation work to do anything else we want to do.
And I just want to cue on the record publicly, that we as a district certainly have an interest in making educationally sound choices, ensuring that we have an appropriate level of supervision, appropriate level of student enrollment, maximize the best configuration. So that will be our priority moving forward as we look through this project. This really is, again, just that first foundational piece, but we're very much going to be looking forward to future work on that area.
Okay, so Ms. Sebal, so the spot survey, you have to do the spot survey just for the configurations, but then you could ununify the unified if you chose to do that later down the road.
Absolutely. We can, and as I said, we will have to do some sort of spot survey or include it in our plant survey because we know that what we are doing here is foundational. The state understands that this is foundational. And we know that once we're done with the master plan, we'll have a better sense of exactly how the configuration of this area will be done. But it allows us to continue our work.
Perfect, thank you. I just wanted to make sure of that. Mr. Giovanelli?
Question real quick. What is included in a spot survey?
A spot survey is, in this case, I think, and generically what a spot survey does is it looks at the campus facilities and it puts it on record for the EFIS, which is the state's building record. In this specific case, what it's doing is it's taking 2 campuses that are looked at by the state as 2 distinct and separate campuses and unifies them into under one EFIS code. But again, that doesn't mean that down the road we can't change things. This just allows us to continue our work on a unified campus, which gives us the ability to then have a blank slate. It's like taking 2 pieces of paper that are halves and making it a whole paper, and then you can do whatever you want with it and altering it in the future. So it's just foundational work.
Can I jump in with one question that may help Ms. Gittens? So if understanding your spot survey correctly, Ms. Gittens, theoretically, it may be one site with a state code. Could be Veterans Park Academy of the Arts. And one building could be the middle, one building could be an elementary, even though it's unified. Separate principals, separate staff, separate age groups in each building. So It's just unilaterally combining the property into one state code, not necessarily saying it's going to be a super K-8. Right. Does that make sense?
Well, and again, down the road, because Ms. Kittens, I understand your concern about the idea of a unified campus under one code, but down the road through this master planning process, we could end up with 3 campuses.
That's right.
We could end up with 2 campuses. We could end up with 1 campus. This is just foundational. This is not saying how many student stations we are going to have on the long term, and this is not saying at what grade levels we're going to have at long term. It does not say what configuration that administration is going to work, and those are the reasons this is foundational, because when we make our final determination, all of that will have to be recorded in a final spot survey, or again in our plant survey that depending on timing, because we're getting close to the time we'll be opening up our new plant survey for the 5 years.
And I have to ask this though, when the new LAMS was constructed and the paperwork that went to DOE, it did say, since it's not large enough to hold all of the students coming from old LAMS now, how are we going to handle those other students? Because on one document it said that the 6th graders would be in temporary in portables. Is that something we're still doing, or where will they be?
So that is not part of the survey. The spot survey, again, only gives us one unifying code. It doesn't tell us, a spot survey does not say we're going to use this building for these students. It just gives us the permission to unify the campus. And then we establish through our working, and currently the thinking is we will be using the old LAMS campus because we aren't going to be doing any work in there. We will be using the old LAMS campus currently for their classrooms for some student stations. But that isn't directed at the state level. That's our own working. That's how we determine is best to function in that campus as we are working on it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
So, I didn't get really finished. So my concern would be making a mega school. What's the safety aspect? What's the data behind that? So that isn't a question that can happen right at this moment, I know.
It's pretty straightforward. There really is no research to support a mega school concept. There's nothing that really says this is a ideal configuration anywhere in our educational literature. In fact, quite the contrary. Often you find that there's magic numbers, balances. That's something that folks do look for, is what is an ideal configuration. Typically smaller is considered better. There is an economy of scale that makes it more manageable to make sure it's not too small, where it's so realistically there is really nothing to support a mega school concept at all. So I can pretty much definitively say that piece. And that's what I would say. This is just the beginning of that conversation. It's really more of a procedural step, Ms. Ebo, is that correct? Procedural in nature. What we're looking forward to through that design work is to really dig into that in greater depth so that when there is a complete and finished vision for what can be accomplished on that blank canvas, that we really are excited to work through that process.
So my concern is safety, of course. And so, I think back as Parkland, and Parkland is considered a mega school. So that would be my concern, is the safety aspect. So what is the benefit of doing this spot survey? What's the benefit then?
Again, this is a foundational piece. We really can't move forward in doing any of the evaluations that we're talking about. And I go back again to our April meeting when we did bring forward,
It says that it's the legal definition is a spot survey is showing the location, sizes, and shapes of buildings on a lot.
This is procedural. It in no way forces us to build a mega school on that site. All it is simply doing is essentially communicating to the state all the all the spaces that we have from walls and classrooms and so forth. It's just an obligation we have to communicate with the state and let them know what our facility is that's there and how it's currently being utilized. And as we change, we'll have to change that utilization as well. And that's after we engage in the design process, we very well anticipate changing uses of rooms and so forth, and that would all come back before the board again, which will have a much clearer output. This is really just, again, resetting that canvas. It's just resetting because the one campus moved, That's all it is.
I get it. So it's a clean slate.
That's right, clean slate.
Clean
Okay,
slate.
that just,
It's a pellet.
You can see
Thank
it
you.
in the sister item on that agenda, which is the K and NN and Estero, where it's merging into quadruple A. We have to report to the school. It'll now be known as quadruple A. They'll give it a new code on the Three Oaks Parkway site, and away that one goes. So similar concept.
thank you. I get it now.
Thank you very much. L5, approval of Phase 1 pre-construction budget estimate for the Fort Myers Technical College renovation.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, we can, I can talk about L5 and L12 offline for time's sake.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons.
Thank you.
We'll proceed to L25, approval to increase expenditure and extend the bid number R167271LN, gutters, fascia, soffit, and roof repair and replacement. The question is the increased cost due to the contract extension and or due to change in costs? We have Ms. Cedeno and Mr. Thompson here.
Good evening, board members and colleagues. So the question, in response to the question, this is a contract extension. So this original bid was a 5-year bid, 3 years of an original base contract, and 2 years for renewal upon the approvals of the district and the vendors themselves. So this is a contract extension, like I mentioned, and the dollars that we're requesting is just to do the FY22 projects that were submitted on the FY22 budgets. That's what the increase will be for. Okay.
And Ms. Patrica, I'm so sorry, I forgot you're up there somewhere. Are you still with us?
I am still here.
I apologize. Thank you. Is there any questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one last good cause and then just a couple other items, just as reminders here. L28, a good cause approval for the final payment for GT 20-06, James Stevens International Academy pre-K remodel. Mr. Rickenbacker?
Yeah, this one, basically, the paperwork from the auditing department didn't make it to the construction department. So it came out of the woodwork. It had been about 2 months ago. The audit was complete, and we're just trying to get a small general construction manager that finished the James Stevens back in December. We're trying to get him his final pay. So originally it was on the agenda. It fell off, and we're trying to bring it back on to get them finalized out.
Wonderful. We also have just 2 more good cause reminders. Ms. Stillwell let me know that just as a reminder, and she did send some information to the board regarding the Department of Health testing vaccine memorandum. So she has sent some information to the board members or will be sending shortly. I'll confirm with her. That's just something to be aware of that will be in addition. She's not here to speak to that in this moment because she's assisting with another meeting, but she is watching the City of Fort Myers meeting or watched that meeting, and I do have a unique update there that the City Council has indicated that they would meet the expectation to fulfill the SRO contribution from the City of Fort Myers. I will be calling the city manager shortly after this call, but I thought that was great news that we would retain our City of Fort Myers partner, and they will have the desired level of staffing in the high schools as well. The City Council passed that. So I will confirm all of that tonight, but I thought that was a great development that we were able to receive in real time. So I wanted to share that will be a good cause item, and again, the reason why I'm sharing it now is we will anticipate that contract coming as a good cause addition in tomorrow's meeting as well.
And I think that it's good to note also that they called it a special meeting just to take care of that today.
Yeah.
To make sure that we were covered.
May I jump in, please?
Yes, Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. So if I may direct a question to the superintendent through the chair, do we have any kind of assurance that when an SRO calls out, they will in fact place a replacement SRO on our campuses? Thank you.
Through the chair, certainly that is an expectation in our contract. Mr. Newland also came to the City of Fort Myers meeting to ensure that we not only address the appropriate level of service, but also the quality of service in that partnership, that we want all of our municipal partners, while we value all of them, we do also expect the appropriate level of observance of the law, which does require that our safe school officer must always be present on the school during the hours of operation. And so So anytime an officer is expected to leave that campus, there should be coverage. That's an expectation within all of our agreements. So Ms. Patrica, but also to the board, I hope that addresses your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Gittens?
Okay, were you finished with your good cause?
Thank you so much.
Okay, I do have an additional good cause item due to the lateness of the hour. I have sent each of you, the superintendent and staff, a copy of the request to add for good cause. And it is basically that James Stevens International Academy be changed to James Stevens Elementary School. And the information that, and someone will be here, I believe, tomorrow to talk about it as well during public comment, but the whole thing, and as you read through it, it is something that is based on policy, board policy 9.10, and it does state, which I added to the email, that it can be presented by the superintendent or the board can just vote on it. It is basically the idea that when they were a middle school, a K through 8, it was the International Academy, and it is, if you read through their letter, it explains why they would like to change it, and it is not a policy change. It is just something that needs our vote, and someone will be tomorrow to also discuss this. And they feel that it will help them as far as with their community presence and all that, just to be James Stevens Elementary and not International Academy, which means people are always saying, well, what does that mean? And they are basically James Stevens Elementary. So what I would like to do, because of the time, I sent everyone the information. If you can review it, I will bring it up, go to the order tomorrow at the end of the briefing meeting or whatever, so that if you have any questions, please let us know.
And Mr. Preborno, if you will, thank you, Ms. Gittens. Let us know if in fact that's all that needs to be done, is the board to approve that, because of course you have cost in signage, you have cost in literature, there is added cost.
And so, can I just
Have to
say, I'm
review
glad you
everything,
said
Madam
that,
Chair.
because they are in the midst of ordering. One of the critical pieces in timing is that they do have approval to get a new digital sign, and they wanted to get this approved before, so the budget-wise, that's already been approved, but they wanted to show and reflect the new title if that was at all possible. So that's the urgency and as to why it was come before. So I do understand you saying the cost, but
Yes, and the principal is not even on here. Who is?
yes, Ms. Kelly Stedman.
She's not on, I mean, she's not writing this. So I was just curious on, it's not from her.
Okay, I will send you the original email. I just sent you the information.
Okay.
And I'm happy to elaborate just on the information that I have here. There were a number of pieces to explain that rationale. And I know the principal is aware of this situation. The International Academy side of it, I guess there was some concern that just the words of a school should only include the word academy if they are secondary schools in which the curriculum is deliberately narrowed, focused, or limited, such as being directed towards specific vocational, occupational, or professional paths. Since they moved away, when it was done, they were a K-8 school. Now they're an elementary school, but still honoring the namesake of the school and the history in our area and so forth. So they have brought forward kind of the pertinent policies, and we'll definitely take a look at all of that as well. But the principal, the teachers, this came at the school level as well. They were aware of all of this piece as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, Ms. Patrica?
Through the chair, Ms. Gittens, do you expect the board to take action on this tomorrow?
And the principal and all were asking, because the urgency is that they have money and are ordering a new digital sign, and they wanted to make this change prior to putting that order in for a digital sign and then having to go back and make changes. That was kind of the urgency.
Thank you. If I may make a comment, I thought that we sought as much community involvement as possible whenever we were making a name change to a school. I mean, I haven't been on the board for the naming of a whole lot of schools, but it's my understanding that we really want community involvement when a school is named or when a name change occurs.
Well, and I believe their thought was it's deleting something, it is not adding, it is not changing the name. It is still James Stevens, and when you read their rationale, and please feel free, this evening or whatever, if you would like to email Ms. Stedman, who is the principal, and if you have any further questions. And I do know that Mr. McCullers had helped them with this process as well, to make sure it was, he was kind of mentoring them through it as well. So it is something that I believe they have brought before probably their parent group or whatever, and they will discuss all that tomorrow.
And then I guess Dr. Savage, did they bring this to you? Or are you just finding this out?
They did bring
And I gave it
just
to
a
him.
concern over, and kind of, we wanted to educate them of the board policy that was pertinent to this piece, but in terms of the specific ask, they were working at the school level to try to put a proposal forward. So I'm just reviewing all of that piece as well, and as Ms. Gittens stated, they were working with former member here, former school district employee, Mr. McCullers, who a long time was a policy person here and helped them craft, I guess, the verbiage that was involved in this particular piece.
Okay, yeah, because he's been gone a year at least, right? Ms. Giovanelli?
And I just was thinking, it was about maybe a year ago, not even, when the charter school changed the name of their school, and they didn't go through that process. And I forget which one, they changed the name, and we just voted that, I mean, we agreed with with the emails we received, and it was a simple process.
And one of the Cape.
Yeah, it was something in the Cape, it was one of the Cape charter schools. And so, I mean, it was just and that was kind of a community thing that, so I mean, I don't see a big deal in it.
Made a part of that
Yeah.
system.
So, I mean, it's not exactly our policy, but, I mean, that wasn't, but we made the change,
Well,
is my
this is
point.
following policy, though.
So,
We
okay.
just need to make sure, because charter schools are not owned by the district, so I don't know if they're.
It's a different process pursuant to the policy.
Okay,
They
thank
have
you.
their own
But it is by
Could
the
you tell
policy,
us-
and I'm just saying it was that simple of a, I'm not opposed to it, I mean,
I'm not either.
so.
Can we probably get a consensus just to get an idea?
Well, I just said I'm not opposed to it, so
Well,
you
he's
got
just
that
going
one.
to, Dr. Savage is going to bring it up. Mr. Bruno is going to do the research and inform us of what, yes, we can do this, or no, we cannot do that.
Right.
So we will have all
Well, I
that
know
ready for
that we
tomorrow.
can, it's policy, and it's been looked into,
No,
so anyway.
Thank you, I appreciate that, but we'll have her do that as our legal. And thank you for doing that, both of you. And then we'll take it, tomorrow. So right now, we're at the point of good of the order. I'm sorry, Ms.
So there was
Bruno?
one more agenda review item, which was with regards to the approval of the request for the reimbursement under attorney recommendation that Ms. Patrica brought up this morning and requested that we have a response to that. So I'm prepared to address it if the chair would like.
Please.
So this is with regards to the attorney recommendation for the approval of the reimbursement of legal fees for board member Giovanelli. And there were several questions, and I think if I just break it down a little bit, I can answer all of the questions. So the first thing is that pursuant to Florida law, and this is going to be in case law, not necessarily statute, we call that common law. So these are things that the appellate courts, the Florida Supreme Court has ruled upon, and they have created what they call a particular right for public officials. Public officials have the right to legal representation at taxpayer expense and defending themselves against litigation, arising out of their public duties in serving a public purpose. In order to demonstrate this, you need two things: arise out of or in connection with them performing their official duties, as well as serve a public purpose, which in this particular case, that did occur. Now, the question is with regards to the word litigation, because that is part of the legal test. There is case law that addresses litigation as it relates to issues with regards to the Commission on Ethics. Specifically, Ellison versus Reed says very specifically that, granted that we think of litigation as civil and criminal, but because of Ellison, it specifically does include cases before the Commission on Ethics. The right for this reimbursement pursuant to case law arises independent of any policies, charters, or ordinances that a county or municipality or school board may have. Pursuant to case law, the subject is not to the discretion of the board. So the board really does not have any discretion as to vote yes or no in terms of this. The reason it's actually coming before you is because there is a statute, Florida Statute 1012.26, which also says that employees have the right to have their legal defense costs covered. That statute requires that any expenditure from the board for reimbursement of legal services shall be made in a properly noticed public meeting. So the board has to notice it, it has to be on the agenda. So that's why it's coming before you. But in terms of your ability to say yes or no, it's very limited pursuant to the case law, so long as it meets that legal test. I just want to clarify, because I think there was another question with regards to Board Policy 1.15, which doesn't look like it's been revised since 2015. So I will be working on revisions to that, because there are a few little tweakings that do need to take place. In that policy, it also says that board members can be reimbursed if they are sued. But again, go back to what the case law says. What is the definition of litigation and suit in this particular common law right? It does include Commission on Ethics issues. So that's why that board policy is also applicable.
So may I ask?
Yes, please.
So basically you're saying yes, that we can approve the payment?
Not just yes that you can, yes you must. There's been a request for it, and you must.
But I
if
mean,
not,
it's still within our purview to do that, to say yes, that we can agree to make the payment.
You have to agree, or that opens us up to additional liability.
Okay.
Ms. Patrica, are you still here?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that clarification, because the policy is confusing when taken or when read in conjunction with the cases that you put in that recommendation. So I am looking forward to those policy changes. If you could also address the shall language in there to indicate that the board still has to approve it despite the fact that we have to pay it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It still has to be approved. You don't have an option. It has to be approved. The question is, why is it coming before me? Because it has to come before you as well. So I will revise that.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then there was one other question with regards to how does this impact employees? It's the same thing. The board does have an obligation to indemnify its employees if it is within their course and scope, but our policy goes a little bit further. There's more requirements in that the superintendent has to review it, ensure that this was during the course and scope, and there's some other additional caveats. There are also AG opinions on this particular topic in terms of employees, and there's also a case. For example, if an employee is successful in a case with regards to a reinstatement and has incurred attorney's fees for that defense, we are not obligated to pay those attorney's fees pursuant to case law. That is completely a different scenario. So I wanted to make sure that this is clear. There are some caveats that we need to pay attention to. But in terms of Ms. Giovanelli, the board must approve it.
Thank you.
She has a question.
Oh, Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, just a question. So I absolutely support paying this, but what I'm wondering is, why is it that this needed to come before us when in a much larger actual litigation, we have one board member who broke away, well, as part of the board, but also who has her own attorney at taxpayer expense. I don't believe that was ever brought in front of the board, so why the difference?
Two different things. One of them is covered under our claims, our insurance, so it's already part of our budget, it's already been approved by the board. This one is a very specific, separate legal expense that was incurred that is not part of our budget that needed to come before the board. The other one, the insurance company has approved it. Had the insurance company not approved it, then you would have found yourself in the same scenario. But the insurance company approved it.
But what if there was more than one board member that wanted that, and this particular issue that I'm talking about, or one in the future, if, is it first come, first serve?
If the carrier approves it, then you're covered. If the carrier does not approve it, which the carrier may, it's up to the carrier, because they're the ones that decide, then you would find yourself in this same type of scenario.
Okay, but I understand that in that scenario, the carrier would only approve one. So I'm just confused. I hear what you say, but it just doesn't seem right that that there are other instances, even though it's somewhat different, that it wasn't at least brought in front of the board to say, okay, we will approve this particular person to have her own attorney, but our insurance won't pay for anybody else. So that's just a point I wanted to make.
Thank you. Ms.
And
Gittens?
can I make the statement that I recall when all of this began, and Ms. Patrica did present to us the fact of following through on this legality, and it was stated that there, we shouldn't do this as far as governing ourselves. And she asked on several occasions for us to go along with it, and we said no. It was voted down by a majority. So my question has to do with, then why does it come back on the district to pay it if an individual board member decided to follow through on this? And maybe I'm looking at it different, you can tell me later, but that was my confusion, because we had discussions, and I recall Ms. Patrica at one point saying, well, let's make history and let's be the first to do this. And that's why I'm concerned about, just wondering about it.
So the question for the board at this point is that I can't answer the questions in terms of the past and what happened with that. All I can answer the question is, what is your legal obligation when you have a board member that comes to you and says, I would like to be reimbursed for legally defending myself and being successful? Your legal obligation, so long as it's within the course and scope of employment and for employment purposes, is to pay that fee.
And I understand that. I still personally feel that if an individual decides to do that, the individual should be responsible for reimbursement.
Okay.
Ms. Giovanelli?
So I don't think you're understanding this, Glenn, because it's, the individual is me, and I had to defend myself.
No. I'm not talking about you having to pay. I believe you should be reimbursed. If Ms. Patrica was the one that decided to do this, and we did not agree to the process, then why should the board have to?
You're talking about two totally different things.
Yes, I get it now. I understand. I didn't understand what you were saying.
Mr. Bruno, maybe, just to clarify, because...
That's okay.
Because it's been stated out here, and just please for clarification for whoever's listening, can you please say, because like you said, it is our obligations to do this, and it is also based on the carrier saying that they were due that, we have no say in that.
But we should have a say,
But we
based on the
don't
policy.
by law, right?
Different types of cases.
By law, we do not have.
One case, you're covered by your carrier.
I just want that.
That's also in the board policy towards the end in terms of your risk management and your carrier. Your carrier is providing legal services to the board. Now, if there's an issue with certain services, then the carrier can decide whether or not I'm going to continue to provide those services. If the carrier chooses to do it, then the carrier chooses to do it.
Yeah, so through the chair, I would like to ask Ms. Patrica, did you have a problem with the recommendation?
No, ma'am, I had concerns about the fact that our policy seems to conflict with law.
Thank you. So with that being said, we will move on. Mr. Bruno, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you all so much we're an hour and a half over, so I so appreciate all of you sticking it out with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are at good of the order. Ms. Vaughn, do you have anything for good of the order?
Tomorrow.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher.
No, I'm going to reserve it for tomorrow.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
Only one question. This is back to the board attorney. So if I wanted to break away from that particular lawsuit, I could do that as well. You're saying that the carrier still has to approve it, or we have to go through the board? That's where I got confused there.
The carrier would have to approve it.
First.
Yeah, the carrier is going to be looking to, you have a budget for your legal services for your claims. And it's already budgeted. You have an excess carrier that's looking at, your different claims. So the carrier provides your defense for legal services, period. Now, if there's a problem, then the carrier can make a decision as to whether or not it wants to provide additional legal services. That's just the way that it goes. If you choose to not participate in the defense through the carrier, then you're responsible for your attorney's fees. You would have to come through this process. That will be a little bit harder because you are already being provided with legal services.
Right, but so is all board members were, so.
Board members are provided with legal services, yes.
Right, so I think it's a little bit conflicting.
On certain things. On certain things.
I mean, because if we choose to separate ourselves for whatever reason, we should have that.
You're already being provided with
Obviously, the
legal services.
statute, law provides that.
You're already being provided with legal services. Your attorney's fees are being paid.
Right.
They're being paid. So if you want to make
making special circumstances or special arrangements, should have fell underneath that as well.
No, because it's the same carrier who's paying the legal services.
Okay.
That's like a sidebar. It's really gets deep, so I would recommend that I ask the same questions. So, Ms. I'm sorry, Ms. Giovanelli, do you have any other?
Tomorrow.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica, do you have anything for the good of the order?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have nothing. Dr. Savage?
I do, Madam Chair. If I could have Dr. Desmore, she actually has an answer to a question from one of the earlier presentations that she was going to get back to us on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Dr. Savage. So clarification on the question that was asked earlier about pay for quarantine. And we talked about having to renegotiate with unions for something different. Well, after I did some checking, in actuality, we do have the MOU that we had actually expired as of July. And so at this point, we have already had conversations with the union that because of the availability of vaccinations at this time, that will just, maintain no policy at this point in time. If you quarantine, that would just be a, sick leave event for an employee or a leave time event for an employee at this point, and that if there is anything different that the union was concerned about, then they would bring it to the bargaining table. So that would be how we would proceed moving forward for the beginning of the school year.
Great, thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I'm sorry, Mr. Freeman.
That was my question. Thank you, Dr. Duffmore. That's more in line with where I thought we were on this issue. And as long as I know that you all are working with the union, excuse me, to negotiate that item, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Preborno, did you have anything for good of the order?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other things to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Yes.